back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
So today's a special day and a special podcast because this is our 500th episode.
Yeah.
And first of all, I can't believe we've done 500 episodes in a row. Without a break.
Without a break.
Like not even 1 week break.
9.5 years.
No like Christmas or holiday breaks.
Nope.
No like we're sick breaks.
52 episodes per year.
Since 2014.
Since January 2014.
I think if I remember, though, we did start in January of 2014, like the second or third week in January. And I think we took like a 2-week break, maybe 3-week break. And then we started up like between episode 2 and 3. And then I think we started up in February of 2014. And then we've never stopped since then every single week. I think we've released on a Monday every single week.
I didn't remember that, but you're probably right.
Yeah, I remember that way back in the day.
Okay, so we have consistently podcast every week since February of 2014.
Yeah, but I like to say it's a better story to say since we started in January of 2014.
No, our reputation is tarnished. It's done.
Because I can't believe we've done that many. So this episode, by the way, if you may want to listen to it or not.
This is not for you. This is for us.
We're going to just completely indulge ourselves. I got some numbers to go over, like where the biggest cities listeners come from.
Yeah.
Some of the numbers, things like that I want to talk about. But we're going to just indulge. In fact, I even have I bought some wine, some Pinot Noir, 2021 Erath, Oregon Pinot Noir, just for the celebration.
We're not sponsored. Yeah, I was thinking we should have had champagne, but we didn't. So let's go ahead and screw the top off of this one.
And I've come to love Oregon wine. Yeah. And women. Since you're from Oregon now.
Yeah.
I like both things.
Yeah. Well, this Oregon is very represented. You are pouring Oregon wine into an Idleshine wine glass.
How much do you want? Is that good for you?
That's good for now. And then we're sitting it on a Hotel Oregon McMinimans coaster. So Oregon is very well represented.
Wow. But we're not in Oregon. We're actually out in Pennsylvania, outside on a back porch.
That's right.
Pennsylvania, USA. And
in our new home.
Middle of the day.
Yeah, we just moved into this pad. This is our new spot. I don't know if this is always going to be our new podcasting spot because we are in the suburbs. The last few episodes we've been talking about the nature sounds of the country of Pennsylvania, including shotgun sounds and that sort of thing. But here, this is the suburbs. Yeah. So this is more like, grass trimmers.
I don't think you're allowed to shoot a shotgun.
I don't think so.
Like they even have rules on when I have to put the trash out.
Yeah. And how many bags you can have in the trash can.
And how tall your grass can be. And
8 inches.
And we've already got in trouble with the homeowners association, day 2 for parking in the wrong spot?
Or parking on the wrong side of the street.
I'm like, I knew this too. Going into a place where you have to in a homeowner's situation, you're going to, I thought our kids would get us in trouble. We got ourselves in trouble. I'm like, this is not going to mix well. We're going to be in so much trouble within a day.
Yeah.
It took 2 days. No, 3 days maybe. Cheers to
500.
So 500 episodes. I brought a prop with me too today.
I was going to say something though.
Yeah,
we should tag the context that we find ourselves in now, which is podcasting, video podcasting with full equipment in the suburbs of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is very different than from whence we came.
That's right.
Right, because when we first started podcasting, first of all, video podcasting wasn't a thing that we were even thinking about. I still wouldn't be thinking about it if I didn't have to. I love audio podcasting.
Well, podcasting used to mean audio. Now it means video.
Yeah, yeah, but when you can just audio podcast, you don't even have to wear pants.
Video podcasting and cold coffee drinks.
Yeah,
have taken over my life. Like I go into a coffee place. I'm like, can I get a Americana? And then they give me a cold one. I'm like, wait, what? This isn't Americana. Like we didn't specify hot. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And so the same thing with podcasting audio.
Yes.
This isn't a video podcast. We didn't specify video. Now it's just automatically video.
Now it's just automatically video. So in the time that has elapsed, 9.5 years, give or take a couple weeks, apparently in January, there's of
2014.
We started under a blanket with a Yeti mic. Do you remember?
In bed under a blanket.
We were
that wasn't in bed.
It wasn't in bed, but we had this Yeti, this single Yeti mic.
Yes.
I think it's actually on our bookshelf.
Oh, is it over there?
Yeah, it's now a souvenir. But we had a Yeti, just like a single stand. Somebody said it looked like a chode. Sorry. So,
Everybody's looking up the word chode now.
is that not a known term?
I didn't know it till somebody said it, and then I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what that is.
All right. Well, be very careful when you look that word up. So, we had one of those, and we put ourselves under a blanket to soundproof it. And it was, I remember in the summer we were still doing that because I remember it was hot as balls. We were just like, it's so warm. And every once in a while I'd have to pause and then take the blanket off and like breathe, and we'd be like pouring with sweat. And then when we cooled off enough, we'd like throw the blanket back on. And this was when we were just starting to get our lives back together because you and I had both left terrible circumstances and situations in our early 30s.
Yeah.
And so we basically both hazed our lives to the ground, and we were restarting everything. So we're in this tiny little apartment in a tiny little town in central Pennsylvania under a blanket talking into a chode microphone. And that's the beginning. That's the etymology.
Yeah.
And now it's it's such a different world.
I mean, you talk about moving into our new house right now that we just got. At the time when we started this podcast in 2014, our lives were a little rough.
Mm-hmm.
We had, like you said, left our faith backgrounds and kind of our lives behind us. We didn't really live our faith backgrounds. We had recalibration around what we believed.
I would say left is a nice word for me. I got booted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a traumatic time. You were going through a divorce, separation, divorce, leaving your life behind. You're worst friends with him. It's
him.
Your ex.
My ex.
I call him my ex-husband-in-law when I introduce him.
Him. If you're listening, him.
Dan. Hi, Dan. Anyway, you were going through a divorce, separation, and I also had we'd just gone through this. I'd gone through a divorce, separation, and I also had 2 children, my 2 sons who were very young at the time. And going through this, I think I got fired ultimately because I was hanging out with you too much at the time. I got fired. I was trying to travel. I wanted to get fired anyway. It wasn't a problem. Point was, we're trying to get Personality Hacker off the ground, and we have zero money. I mean, zero money.
Mm-hmm.
We have that Yeti microphone and some equipment that I still had left over from my old podcasting, days when I was trying to do podcasting consulting. And I remember at the time, we didn't have enough money for furniture, and we just had a new baby, Piper, who's just been born. It was way back, right? And then, so at the time, we were in this little apartment. It was so cheap apartment to rent, and we didn't have a bed. But we went into the attic of the apartment, and we found like a queen mattress up there.
We found a mattress in the
dirty
attic.
Old queen mattress, and so we covered it. We bought a sleeve to cover it or whatever, and that's what we slept on the floor.
After spending many cans of Lysol.
Yes.
Trying to get whatever
vacuuming and Lysoling.
Right, vacuuming and Lysoling. Yeah.
And we were on I think we were on some government assistance to be able to get food and some things. Like it was a pretty tough time. And in the state of that is when we started Personality Hacker. Mm-hmm. Like we started no furniture for our clothes. They were stacked in piles around the room. We're on a mattress a dirty old mattress we found in our attic.
To be fair, we have furniture now and the clothes are still stacked in piles around the room. So,
fair enough.
I don't know if that was that
was our excuse at the time.
Incident. Yeah.
Now we do have furniture, albeit a lot of IKEA, but it's still good.
Yeah.
And but I remember that was like trying to start a business. You don't know what's going to happen with it. A podcast. We're like, I hope this works. In fact, the podcast was kind of a second thought.
It was an afterthought.
We were really working on getting Personality Hacker was going to be like an assessment where you could take an assessment and then you would get your personality type results, and we would have what at the time we called them starter kits. Now we call them owner's manuals, one for every type, where it teaches you personal growth techniques around yourself. And we're using ourselves as controls and some of the trauma and some of the changes we'd made. And I was like, you know what, we need to start this podcast. And certainly enough, it went very well. And so it helped kick off the business and kick off what we're doing now. And, we find ourselves 9.5 years later in a very different situation, but man, was it grueling work to get here. Like this is not taking a break every single week, going and hustling and moving and just never quitting. And there's been a lot of other personality type podcasts that have started and stopped in the time that we've been doing this. And we're still doing it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in awe of that fact.
We
Take another
are-
glass of drink of wine.
Yeah, we are unapologetically self-congratulatory over it that we've been doing this like consistently for so long. And I think it's actually created a rhythm underneath. I mean, we've done this through deaths in the family. We've done this through kind of terrible things that have happened to us, like, being forcibly ejected from homes and having to, sometimes you and I are not in a great space ourselves in a relationship, and we've like done it through fighting and through, there's so much that has happened and so much drama. Life just brings tons of drama. And and I think we're pretty proud of ourselves for doing it despite all the drama of life and making it through.
And I would say our personality types. I have ENFP preferences, ENTP preferences for you. If we look at the cognition that we use, our 3-year-old or inferior cognitive process, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's introverted sensing, memory. It's about the consistency, the rhythms, the sticking with something over the long haul. It's supposed to be a weakness of ours, and it is. It
is a challenge.
Deep uncertainty, deep weakness, and yet we still made this happen somehow.
Well, and you can tell that it's been so good for us. Like integrating that part of who we are has been, I think, just being obligated, having a duty to do this podcast every week. I think it's created a rhythm to our lives. It's like underpinned a lot of other stuff. Yeah. When life has gotten massively chaotic, it's like, yeah, but did we get the podcast out? And so I think it all by itself has been, it's us giving our introverted sensing or memory function, it's us giving it space to do what it, to have itself work in our lives, right? It wasn't that we're like, we have to actively do this for our own personal growth and development. We just committed ourselves to it, and it ended up helping us grow. I think that's been a massive side benefit to it. So I think a part of it is being self-congratulatory because we can't believe we've succeeded in doing that for so long. 9.5 years, 500. And it's actually been more than 500 episodes if you take like the PHQs and the questions from readers. If you take those into account, we're probably 550, 600. But as far as the weekly cadence podcast, those have come and gone. But the weekly cadence podcast has been a routine for this long. And I think I think that in my mind, I use it as an example of the power of integrating the inferior function or integrating that 3-year-old function in the car model. It exemplifies to me how much a part of your life your last or your 4th function can be.
Yeah. Couple things I like about it too is it's a legacy of where we've been at for the last 9.5 years.
Yep.
Like I listen back at some of the episodes, I cringe at in my voice, I have like a hesitancy sometimes. Like I'm not as certain or sure of myself, especially when I'm talking about a more speculative topic or something.
Yeah.
And I listen to more recent episodes. I'm like, whether I know what I'm talking about or not, I sound more sure like I do, which is good.
And I feel the exact opposite. I feel like in the early days, I spoke as if I knew absolutely everything. And I go back and I'm like, maybe I was right about that. Now I feel like I'm a little bit more measured in what I say.
Now
I'm
you
like,
hedge.
I'm a little more hedgy than, like I empirically know all of the things. I feel like I've kind of backed off of that a little bit.
Yeah.
And for the better. I think it's better.
So have you been frustrated with me that I've not made it easy on us? Like a couple of the other things too is like rules. They're not actual rules, but they're kind of metrics. Like we can't rely on interviews every week. You and I have to generate new, fresh content about the intersection of personal growth and personality types every single week.
Yeah. Well, we have done interviews, but only because we kept getting requests for them.
Yeah.
But your rule is that we can't rely on interviews as our primary form of content.
Yeah. So we don't get lazy and just dial it in and ask questions. And, I mean, you've been interviewed by somebody before where they just like go off a list and just list down questions. It's so easy. I'm like, man, why is this easier to do for everybody else? Oh, because they're doing interviews. It's like you just ask somebody and they fill the content in for you.
Well, they don't have these arbitrary rules, Joel.
I know.
that prevent them from doing things that are leveraged.
So never taking a break.
Never take a break.
Ever. I don't care if it's Christmas Day, we're going to have a podcast come out. No interviews.
Well, few interviews.
Or few interviews.
Yeah, probably less than 15% of our podcast, 10 to 15%, or maybe even less than that.
Yeah, and then when I say no interviews, no reliance on interviews. And then the other thing too that I was keen on, or that I really wanted us to do is, not rely on other people's content or models. Now, in the early days, we did. Like we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We rely on that. But as we went on, I was like, we need to come up with more original, take an idea and then originally expand on it.
Right.
And then we don't write scripts. We don't have like the most planning we do is some bullet points every once in a while.
Oh, we sometimes get a framework that
Yeah.
we do for 16 types.
Yeah.
Man, those are like butter.
Yeah.
Those are so easy. Like I just go, oh, look, an outline and like a script. Although I have to admit, by the time I'm at like episode 9 or 10 on that, I'm like, we're done here, right? We don't have to go all the way to 16. It's like,
Yeah.
nope, you have 6 more to do. And I'm like, oh. But those, every once in a while, we'll have an outline one where we do 16 types. But yeah, for the most part, everything has been practically extemporaneous speaking.
And-
it's like, what do you want to talk about? Okay, go.
And then I have a thing against just doing Zoom calls. Like if we're going to do an interview, let's bring Dr. Darinardi into the studio. Let's not just try to do it over Zoom. So we got to wait for him to fly in or come in. Or we want to talk to somebody, we got to get him on our stage at one of our live events.
Well, because when in the earlier days, I guess this is probably a midpoint, when we would do that, we couldn't rely on other people's technology being very good. So we would have these interviews that the interviews were okay, but man, the audio was terrible. And after like 2 or 3 of those, we're like, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. We cannot rely on other people's audio to be good. And so now it's the rule. Now they got to be here in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's some of the things. I think
These rules, Joel's
I'm trying to think if there's any other-
iron-fisted rules of podcasting. They're a little snobby.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, they're a little snob. And also our equipment at this point, you spend a lot of time making sure our equipment is really good. And so there's a little bit of like a Steve Jobs, soldering the name.
Perfectionism.
That's right. Soldering the name into the motherboard. There's like a little bit of that. But that's okay. I think it's kept the quality good, or at least I think so. And I think, yes, your original question is, did that annoy me? And the answer is unequivocally, yes, absolutely, it's annoyed me.
Antonia,
And
do my
also-
rules annoy you?
Yes. Yes, your perfectionism annoys me. And also, I think it's kept it really good.
Yeah.
I think I would have never gotten us here. Honestly, I never would have. I'd have crapped out a long time ago. I think it's been the momentum of the two of us, and particularly you, that has driven and made sure that this is quality and it's consistent. And whenever we've had to backdate, anybody who's still listening, and this is a completely self-indulgent episode, so I wouldn't be surprised if nobody's listening. But if anybody's listening and has been with us for a long time, if we had to backdate, if you're like, where's that? Why did the podcast not come out on Monday? That was all me. Like, if we've been late, it's because of me. It's never been Joel. He's always made sure that we are early, if not on time. And I'm always the person who's like, it's going to be fine. Nobody's even going to notice if we backdate. And then for a while there, we were backdating really bad, like for a few months. All me again. And I can't remember.
What do you mean by backdating? Because somebody's listening along going, what's backdating?
Fair. Okay. So backdating is on iTunes. You can record something later, but then date it to the time that it was supposed to come out.
So really, we didn't really hit every week. Some weeks we'd miss our deadline, but we'd record a couple days after, and then we'd schedule it. We would put the date on the thing 3 days before.
Well,
so if you go back, you can look at every 7 days there's a podcast hitting, but some of those were recorded in like a cluster and then portioned out.
Not very often though did we miss the whole week. Usually we're just a couple days late and then backdated it. That was most common, and that was just a time period. Like we didn't do that forever. But even then, I think that I probably would have just said, don't worry about it. We'll just miss that week and we'll just do one later. But no, if we didn't make it that Monday, we recorded 2, one for that Monday and one for the next Monday. And so we have made it every week, I think.
Yeah.
We've made an episode for 52 weeks out of every year for 9.5 years.
And I judge people that take time off.
I know you do.
Like Bill Maher on HBO, and he's like takes off for the holidays for a month. I'm like, what, you loser? You can't record ahead of time and still schedule it? Like you have to take off? What are you? Are you really a professional? That's how I feel.
But that snobbery served us well, so cheers.
Yeah, and I'm noticing like even stand-up comedians will like repeat the same set on different shows. Like they'll go on the Tonight Show, then they'll go on a different show, a morning show, and
they're testing the material.
But they're also they don't have to recreate so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember watching Louis C.K. several years ago, and he was like, I never repeat content. Like every year I come up with new stuff. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I never want to repeat something. I never want to get lazy or complacent. We should always come up with fresh new stuff every single week. And that can cause trauma to have to come up with that much content all the time, that pressure, right? And have it be good. I mean, seemingly, I think it's good, but, have it a quality. Because there's probably I'd say probably 10 or 15 episodes we recorded never released. We trashed them. We did one on profanity once. And you're like, we cannot release this.
We can't release this one.
I just started dropping the F-bomb right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we just get into and I'm just like, just the amount of offense of the things that both of us said, particularly me, because I just took the filter off. We cannot really, I think I even erased it off my hard drive so it would never accidentally get out because it was so awful.
That's good to know. Actually, it was really bad. I
expunged it. It was so bad.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Other ones haven't been like that. They've just been it's not that great.
We had a high podcast that went on for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that one either.
We never released that? Yeah.
We didn't release that one. It just kept going. You kept telling me to get more high, and then you kept asking me questions, and I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was just I don't think that one's.
That's why they don't work very well.
So, but we did do the drinking one.
I was trying to get to the 4 hour and 20-minute mark.
Yeah.
On the high podcast.
Did we make it? I don't even know.
That's what I was trying to do.
And then we did that. I went back to check, by the way, all the other 100 episode ones. And we had a message in all of those.
Because we did one at 100, 200, 300, 400. Now we're at 500.
Yeah. I mean, we had a message that talked about where we were at that time period and what our mission was and who Personality Hacker is and where we're going. And I feel like at 500.
And now we're just drinking wine and
I'm just
talking shit.
I'm just drinking wine and talking about stuff. I don't even know. But there's a couple episodes that I think got nuked because of how mad we were at each other. We were angry podcasting, and at the end of it, we're like, maybe this one shouldn't be for the public. I think there's been a couple of those too. But other than, how many did you say there were?
I'd say 10 to 15 max over the course of the entire time.
Gosh, that's good for us.
They're basically false starts.
Yeah,
and then we'd have to do another recording.
Right.
Change the topic, something
like that.
But
a false start that made it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, a complete false start and false middle and false end. Yeah.
I even had idealism around that time to record ahead of the game as an emergency one in case we couldn't record a certain week, in case we wanted to take time off. I think I have something in the files somewhere. It's something we recorded back in 2015. It's for emergency use. It's probably garbage now. It's some topic and it's for emergency use. And we've never published it. But it's sitting somewhere in the hard drive.
We could have used that a couple times.
Now it's probably not that. It's probably
the voice is totally different.
I probably pre-puberty at that point. I was I want a high voice like this at the time. Who knows?
Probably.
It was so long ago.
That's right. That's why Piper's a modern day miracle. Well, the challenge is that there's certain things that I reference a lot, right? Things that are principles that I'm like, this is a smart thing. I should say this a lot. And I never know where I say those things now. And so I don't know if I'm repeating myself or if I'm not repeating myself.
Listeners back in the day were doing, somebody was, it was 2016-ish. They were doing a drinking game. Every time you or I would say, hold space for someone.
Yes.
They would say they're getting hammered doing that drinking game.
There was a time when the phrase hold space was
gotta hold space for that person, Antonia.
Very commonly used. I also got feedback that I used the phrase right like a lot. And I immediately started working on it. I realized it was a word whisker. A word whisker being the thing that you say when you're nervous, or whatever. And I would end my sentence with right, and then I'd start the next one with like, and then I would do the next sentence.
Yeah.
And I think every once in a while I do the right like, but I think I've mostly expunged it. So the podcast has made me I think even though I believe that I was pretty decent at public speaking, it's definitely made me a better public speaker. And I'm way more comfortable in front of a microphone. Maybe even too comfortable at this point.
You got a glass of
I'm
wine.
This isn't even a thing, right?
Leaning back, chilling.
Dang it.
So I brought some actual hard stats that we could look at. I wonder if you can guess the top 10 countries that listen to the Personality Hacker podcast. Oh, the other thing that happened too this past week, or within the last few days, is we just crossed the 15 million download mark, at least on the audio side. So cheers to that too.
Cheers.
So 500 episodes, 15 million total downloads since we started.
Drink after. Cheers.
Oh, whoops.
Otherwise, it's a one-sided cheers.
Yeah, it's like throwing salt over your right shoulder or something. So we've crossed 15 million downloads, and do you want to hear the top 10 cities? Or excuse me, the top 10 countries?
Joel, I'd love to hear the top 10 countries.
All right, so number 10, coming in at number 10,
Yeah.
is the country of France. We don't even speak the language.
Oh, you're going up to 1.
Yeah, I'm going to
I
start
thought
at 10.
France was number 1. I was like, really?
No, France is number 10.
We're huge in France.
Well, make sure, actually, I should count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, they're not numbered, so I want to make sure I'm actually going up. So I'm like, oh, wait, that's
So-
like 8, not 10. I'll even write the little numbers here so I don't lose track of things. So if France is number 1, let
mean
me
number
see.
10.
Or number 10. Number 10. This wine's not even taking effect yet, and here I'm already all over the place. New Zealand is number 9.
Okay.
Now that's English speaking. That would make sense. I don't understand why France is number 10, but
I don't
okay.
know.
Norway is number 8. The Netherlands is number 7. Sweden is number 6. Germany, the Germans, are number 5. So these are all in Europe except for New Zealand. The United Kingdom is number 4. All right, so you know what the top 3 countries are. Can you guess what the top 3 countries are? What do you think number 3 is? United Kingdom is number 4. I would have guessed that was like 1 or 2.
England's part of the United Kingdom, right? So
That's correct.
yeah. So
Right answer.
So England is now number
Yay!
3.
I wish
Yay.
I'd like clap or laugh tracks for you.
Yeah. Ireland? No, that's part of the United Kingdom too.
Yes.
No, that's Great Britain. United Kingdom does not include Ireland, right? Great Britain.
Well,
no,
one
is
of
it
the
opposite?
islands, right? Doesn't one of the islands? I don't know. This isn't a
One of
geography.
the islands?
Isn't there like a north? Isn't there like a?
Is that still officially a thing? I don't know.
No.
Wow.
Now you've made me have complete total uncertainty
I do too. Okay.
on
Northern Ireland versus Ireland.
I thought one was independent from Great Britain, but maybe I don't know my geopolitics as well as I thought I did, especially
It
drinking
changes
some
a lot. I think
Pinot
I used to
Noir.
know it very well, but now I haven't really been paying attention since.
Okay.
Like, the
Well,
higher-
let's move on. That it's not Ireland or anywhere in the United.
okay,
it has
okay,
nothing
okay.
to do with the United Kingdom or England. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it certainly has nothing currently to do with the United Kingdom or England.
This is a very discrediting podcast, isn't it? So, okay, what's number 3? Australia.
Yes.
Number 2 is Canada.
Oh, did
And
you already
number-
look at the list?
No, and number 1 is the United States.
Wow. See,
right.
I would not have put Canada as number 2.
Really?
Well, don't they don't have a lot of people up there. They have moose or meese or however. What's a plural for moose? Mooses.
Canadians love that joke.
They don't have a lot of.
They're super happy you said it.
But my point is that the United Kingdom or Australia, doesn't Australia have more people than Canada? Or
So
no?
this is what I learned about Australians when I started getting into internet marketing.
Wait, maybe Canada does have more people than Australia. I don't know.
Yes, I bet it does.
Yeah, it probably does.
I don't know though. I have no idea.
It's probably
and
like 100 million or 150 million in Canada.
Yeah. I don't know. Yes.
Yeah.
And what I know about Australians is that they love, or at least they did at one time, and I'm assuming this is still accurate, information products.
Yeah.
And anything that connects them basically to the Western world, even though it's digital. And so I think that they tend to be really like very high podcast numbers for, like English speaking podcasts and stuff.
Because they're isolated from all of us. So they have to travel to everything and get
That's
on
right.
everything to watch. And
That's right.
And they're also a different time zone than the rest of us in the
Mhm.
Western world.
Yep.
Not
So-
different time zone, but on the kind of a different side of the world. So they probably have to work a lot harder.
That's a
to get
different time
access.
zone.
But we're also a different time zone than England. I'm saying
That's right,
they're like
yeah.
a radically
Right.
different time of day, night cycle.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Europe and the United States can kind of do business with each other.
Right.
You get closer to Australia, it's kind of a weird off
Yeah.
kilter.
Yeah.
All right. So have we done enough sufficient ignorance of geopolitical population? I just would have a list here, and now I completely made a fool of myself. Which
We're
is
drinking,
fine.
it's okay.
So United States is number 1. Can you guess which states in the United States are number 1?
I think I know this one.
And we can go from bottom or top, whatever. Do you know who's number 1?
California.
California is number 1. I am actually impressed. Number 2?
New York.
No.
Ooh, okay. Florida?
It's one of the places the Californians are fleeing to.
Texas?
Texas
Okay.
is number 2.
Yeah.
And I think Texas is way up there in population too. And then number 3, I think you already said it,
New York
Florida.
or Florida?
So
Number 3.
California, Texas, and Florida,
Okay.
all sunny, warm places.
Yeah.
Makes me happy. New York is number 4, and that's probably just from the sheer number of population in New York City, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Illinois is number 5. I'm guessing Chicago has a lot of influence on the Illinois being number 5, unless there's a lot of people in rural Illinois. Washington State is number 6, not Washington, D.C. Georgia is number 7. Colorado is number 8. Virginia is number 9, and North Carolina is number 10. These are the top 10 states in the United States that listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Cities go.
Cheers to all of them.
Let me just do the cities real quick. I'll start at the bottom. I think this is the top 30 cities.
Do we have to do all 30?
No, we don't. I can start it. Let me start it.
Let's just do top 10.
All right, top 10. Portland, Oregon is number 10.
Idleshine.
Denver is number 9. Atlanta is number 8. Seattle-Tacoma area is number 7.
I wasn't paying attention. I was just shouting out to
Chicago is 6.
Portlanders.
Dallas-Fort Worth area is number 4. I thought Austin would be up there, but it's not. I think Dallas-Fort Worth might be sucking all the energy out of Texas. Washington, D.C. is number 4. Oh, wait. Did I do this out of order? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, yeah. Washington, D.C. is number 4. San Francisco is number 3. New York is number 2. And the number 1 city in the United States for podcast listeners of the Person podcast is
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California. We did a meetup in L.A. It was Hollywood back before pandemic. It was like 2019, maybe?
Yeah, 2018, 2019.
We sent an email out to listeners that were on the email list, and we made an announcement on the podcast. And it was 3 days. We're like, hey, we're going to be in Hollywood at this like pub in Hollywood in 3 days. We had like 70 people come out in Hollywood.
In 3 days' notice. It was crazy.
It was the biggest meetup we've ever had.
Yep.
Especially how quick and last minute it was.
Yeah.
I think we did one in Washington, D.C., which is technically number 4 on the list.
Yeah.
And we had one person show up.
Yeah, they were like, screw you guys. This is it was a weekday?
It was a Monday night.
It was a Monday night.
And they said, I'm not going to the other side of the city on a Monday night.
On a Monday?
I'm like, well, the Los Angeles people came out as quickly as they could.
Yeah.
That's why Los Angeles is cooler than Washington, D.C., I guess.
Uh-oh. Angry emails. Here we come. Nobody's listening, so we're not going to get angry emails.
So I think it's because Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco. I don't understand D.C. I guess there's a lot of maybe intellectual people there, but the first 3 cities have a lot of artist, like creative community, especially L.A. L.A. is a very ENP kind of city, right?
It is. It sucks ENPs from other parts of the country to it.
Yeah. And I think San Francisco's got a lot of NTs. It's very NT heavy, which we tend to attract NTs. New York just has a ton of people, so I can understand why that's number 2.
It's just a lot of humans.
I don't get Washington, D.C., because it's every time I go to D.C., because we only live like 90 minutes away, everybody seems very serious, very professional, like don't laugh or smile at all. Like, we're here to do real work, guys.
And they don't have any patience for your shenanigans.
And it's, and everybody's just like blinks at me like, all right, whatever, dude. Like, don't be a weirdo. So I don't understand why it's up there, but I think it's because it's intellectual. Dallas also is weird to me, why that's number 5. Do you have a sense of why Dallas of all places?
I've never been to Dallas, so I don't know.
Dallas-Fort Worth, it's the metro. It's just a mass amount of people too down there.
Yeah.
Chicago makes sense because it's a big city.
Yeah. Although Chicago people, like inner city in Chicago, they won't come out for meetups either. When people are in big cities and we tend to have our meetups in suburban areas, tend to, not always, but we'll do it like in an outskirt area. People in the city, they're like, I'm not driving 30 minutes outside the city to go to a meetup. And yet at that same meetup, we'll have somebody who like drove 7 hours from way outside the city, the other direction. They drove 7 hours for it. But in the city, people are like, yeah, screw that. I'm not.
Yeah, we want to do an Uber. Like we did out by O'Hare Airport in Chicago.
Yeah.
And we had a few Chicagoans in the area come.
Yeah. So, some diehard fans, some lovely people.
People drove from Iowa.
Shout out to Dominic.
And Nebraska.
Yeah.
And freaking like Kansas.
Yeah.
Like they drove from southern Illinois or Indiana to get there, Indianapolis. And the Chicagoans are like, 30 minutes, I'm not going anywhere.
That's right. Screw that.
And so that was something we learned about Chicago is people in Chicago don't travel anywhere unless it's like next door to them, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And with Washington, D.C., they're like, oh, you just can't do it midweek, but do brunch. Do a liquid brunch in D.C. on like Sunday.
Everybody's staggering around in the streets of D.C. hammered at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
You got it. They're like, if you do a liquid brunch on Sunday, you'll get a ton of people from D.C. I was like, all right, good to know.
Seattle, Atlanta, Denver, and Portland, number 10, 9, 8, 7 through 10.
We did a meetup in Portland, but we've done 2, haven't we?
Well,
or just the one?
Atlanta's a creative city like LA. I
Yeah.
think it's because it got a creative class, but
Yep.
Seattle, Denver, and Portland are all granola cities. So I think granola. They're kind of like.
Do I know granola?
You grew up in Portland. You know what I mean by granola, right? You like wear Birkenstocks and you eat like a lot of granola.
I don't know if everybody's wearing Birkenstocks anymore, but yes, I do know the phrase
You know
granola.
what I mean.
Yes.
So I think Seattle, Portland, and Denver. So it seems like the audience, based on the cities, our creative class. I can't explain Washington, D.C. I guess intellectuals. The intellectuals in a city that can stand us.
Let's pretend somebody's still with us at this point in this massively self-indulgent 500 episode.
Yeah.
If you happen to be with us still,
I'm not even pretending to make this audience friendly.
I'm not either. I'm not even. I mean, I'm throwing a bone every once in a while to go like somebody might be watching this, but let's pretend somebody is, and let's pretend they're from Washington D.C. If that's a thing that's happening at the same time, can you let us know what the deal is, why you're listening to us? Because Joel is very confused.
Oh, wait. That's it right there. No one's actually from Washington, D.C.
Oh.
So this is a city of people, because every administration, every turn of government, I mean, there are people that grew up and live there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and they listen.
But if you go to Washington, D.C., you'll find a ton of 28-year-olds just getting started in their careers.
That's true. Right.
Like every year, you'll see a bunch of 20-year-olds getting started in their careers.
That's right. And they're the ones who want to go into government. They don't want to go into the movies. I'm going to get more wine.
You should do that.
Okay. Here. I'm just warning you because I'm a lightweight and it doesn't take much.
Okay. So I didn't do all 30, but that's the top cities. And I think it's intellectuals. I guess oil people in Dallas. I don't know.
Oil people.
I mean, I think Dallas, Dallas is a weird city. It's like one of those. I don't understand Dallas. I've been there a couple times. It's a city I don't fully understand. DC, I guess, pulls a lot of intellectual. I don't know. So it's creative class, intellectual.
It's like, if you're not a creative, why are you listening to us?
No. I'm just trying to understand, like, in a general broad, since we're all about personality types and finding really unique individualism in people, I'm just going to broad brush everyone and slam them into
and be like, only one kind of person should be listening to us.
3 broad categories of humans, just disregard all the nuance of humanity.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the wine will start taking effect here soon, especially if I pour some more.
You should claim it already has. After all that,
it probably has. I just don't know.
Ireland and Great Britain or United Kingdom? Okay, it's in United Kingdom, not Great Britain. Great Britain is England, Wales, and Scotland.
Yeah. Okay.
United Kingdom includes Ireland. I hope I'm right about that. If I'm not, it's the hooch talking. All right. I don't want to be that discredited.
So we did record a drinking podcast before, but this is going to be kind of a 2.0, I guess.
This is the 500th drinking episode.
What were we just talking about? So the 3 broad categories of types, not nuanced in personality, are I would say intellectuals, creatives, and granolas. And I would say I'm a little of all 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I identify with all 3.
It's a reflection of Joel Mark Witt.
Yeah. Would you say you're an intellectual, granola, creative? Can you think of any other categories of people?
Well, to be fair, introverted feeling or authenticity is way down the stack for me. Yeah. So I actually don't know what I am.
Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. I just talk a lot and say stuff.
We'll come back to some more stats here if we need them. I have some of our top episodes as well from the last 9.5 years. Like, I think the top 20 episodes. I don't think you'll be surprised on those at all. But I want to talk about my prop. Can I talk about my prop?
Yeah.
So this little device here is an MP3 player. So for Christmas, I think it was 2006. It might have been 2005. My mom got me a gift card for Christmas. It was someplace like Walmart or something. I don't know what it was, but I had this gift card. I think it was like $50. I'm like, what am I going to use this gift card for? I don't know. So I'm pretty sure it was Walmart here in the United States. It's like if you're from out of the country of the United States, it's like a big, it's a store that has everything you could possibly need and want. And people in the United States make fun of it because it's usually inexpensive or cheaper made products. And it's not that great of a place to go to, but they do have cheap things. So every small town has one.
So we all do.
Every small town has one often. And so the small town I was living at the time had one. So she got me a gift card for it. So anyway, I go in 2005, 2006. I hadn't, this is the first MP3 player I ever got. And I was like, you know what? I want that MP3 player. It's like $40 or something. And if you look at it, if you're watching back on camera, you'll see this comes apart. And I'll explain the reason why. So back in 2006, I think it was 2006 when I got this, if you wanted to listen to music or a podcast or anything, but music, let's just say music, we didn't have phones till 2007, 2008, smartphones. So you had to go and get a MP3 device like this. And this one pulls apart, and you can see there's a USB port, and you can plug it into your computer, and you can download music. This is 1 gig storage. You could download music or files, podcast files. So
that was a lot back then. Full gig.
A full gig, yeah. I mean, they could store a lot of music. And they did have iPods.
Yeah.
At the time, but I didn't want an iPod because I think they were expensive. I just got this. So I got this, and I'm like, you know what? I put some music on it, MP3s. And I thought, I want to listen to this new thing, podcasts, right? I hear about these ideas of podcasts. So, and I had been since the age of 11 or 12, I'd been doing radio. My father was on a radio station in Pittsburgh where I grew up. And I was helping him run the radio boards and the audio equipment like when I'm 11 years old, right? So I've been doing radio a long time, production stuff. So I'm like, I want to listen to this new thing, podcast, because it's kind of like the new way of radio on the internet. But you had to like take this, you had to go and find an RSS feed, which how you found podcasts. You had to get the feed, download the podcasts onto your computer, and then transfer them onto this, and then take this, plug your headphones in. You could charge it, put batteries in. You could go and take a walk, and you could listen to something off of this.
I remember my best friend Katie was the one who every once in a while I talk about her because she died in 2010, and it was like heartbreaking. Way back, I was still living in Portland. It had to have been about like 2004, 2005. She started talking about podcasts, and she would download them and listen to them on like a little MP3 player or whatever. And I was like, what is this podcast thing? And she kind of tried to explain it. She's like, it's like a show, but you download it. And I'm like, well, just listen to the radio. I didn't get it.
You
I was
dummy,
like,
just listen to the radio.
Yeah, why would you go to all the work of downloading something? And she's like, and I remember wanting to leave at one point. And she's like, wait a minute, my podcast is downloading. Like, I just remember being annoyed. It's like, what is this thing even? And so that was like early days of podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, early. How did she even discover it, I wonder?
Probably just on the internet.
Oof.
And YouTube came out, I mean, it was started up in 2005.
Was it really?
So when we say podcasts, I mean, if you're young and you're watching this on YouTube, like there was no YouTube before 2005. And even in 2005, 2006, even up till maybe the first 5 years of YouTube, it's like cat videos and that the evolution of Dance Guy was like the #1 video for a while. There was no PewDiePie. There was no gaming streaming system or stuff.
No Discords.
There were certainly no podcasts on YouTube the way they are now.
Yeah.
So anyway, you had to download, and there was audio only.
Twitch, I meant.
Yeah, Twitch, which used to be Justin TV back in the day, and they became Twitch. And I just found that out recently. So anyway, you had to download stuff on here. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to find a podcast. So I'm like searching on the iTunes, because iTunes had just now started to index podcasts. It's like this brand new thing where you could find them in one centralized place rather than having to find them all over the internet, which is really nice. So I look up media. I'm into media, and I've always wanted to be in production and media and all this. So I look up, this is like 2005, 2006, media, and I find out this podcast being recorded called This Week in Media. And I download a few episodes, I start listening to it, and they start talking about podcasting, and everybody that's kind of into podcasting is talking about podcasting, and it's mostly podcasts about podcasts because that's what happens when industry starts up. Like, most crypto shows are talking about crypto because they're into crypto stuff.
And how Myers-Briggs people talk, or MBTI, which is what everybody calls it now, is just talking about MBTI things.
Yeah.
And woo.
Uh-oh. The wine's kicking in.
The wine's kicking in.
The wine
and
is
whether
kicking in.
Whether or not people who claim to be certain types through their type.
Yeah.
That's the sophistication of the community that we've built, or the Myers-Briggs system is built. Uh-oh. I think. You talk. I'm going to see if I can fix my microphone.
All right. So I'll keep talking about my MP3 player. So this MP3 player, the reason I'm bringing it up is this is the entire reason that I'm even sitting here talking to you. It's the reason I'm married to you, the reason I know you, and the reason you watching or listening right now are hearing my voice. If it hadn't been for this MP3 player, I may not be in this position right now. This like literally changed my life, the etymology of this. So I started listening to this podcast called This Week in Media, and they're talking about podcasting starting up, and they were talking about these two guys, Chris Penn and Chris Brogan in Boston, are starting up this thing called PodCamps, which is it's like an open sourced community event that no one owns or charges for, and you just kind of go and show up at like a college campus somewhere that they've rented out for the day on a Saturday. Everybody comes together and they create a schedule of what's going to happen that day, and everybody talks about what they like about podcasting and give advice and kind of share information and try to figure it out together like a community. Like, that sounds amazing. So I hear about this. I look it up and I find PodCamps. And there's one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, near where I live. Or, excuse me, Baltimore maybe at the time. I guess I was living in Baltimore at the time, right? Yeah, I would have been living in Baltimore at the time. But there was one in Pittsburgh. So I actually drove up to Pittsburgh to attend it. And I thought to myself, well, I can't just go attend this thing. I'm going to go to this thing and it's open source and anybody can speak. I might as well go and I might as well speak at this thing because that's the best way to meet people and get leverage. Like, I don't know anything about podcasting. I had been in radio though. So I'm like, well, I'll just take my background in media production, radio, and I'll go up there and I'll give like 10 ways to make your production higher quality or something so I can get a speaking gig. So I speak there and it goes well. I mean,
I just discovered this thing exists.
Yeah.
I'm going to go speak at a conference.
Very ENFP of me, right? So basically, I meet Chris Brogan at this event, which is, if you don't know who he was big in the podcasting space back in the day. He's into social media. He's written multiple books like Trust Agents, I think is the book and stuff. And he just kind of getting his career started as well as a consultant. I meet him there and a bunch of other people. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is the internet now, internet radio. Like, this is going to be a thing. And when I say this is going to be a thing, no one knew what it was at the time. But I'm like, this is kind of like crypto now.
Yeah.
Or maybe crypto like 3 years ago.
Right.
Everybody's like, who knows? Like, no one knew about it, but everybody that knew, like, first learned about it was like, this is probably going to be a big thing. It was like crypto at that time. And so I'm like, something's going to be coming of this. This is, again, pre-iPhone. And I'm like, I want to start doing this. So I created a company and like a consulting company immediately around trying to help people understand social media and how to market and how to create podcasting. I was working at the Maryland Zoo at the time, and I thought, well, we need a podcast there. I'm going to do a video thing. We shot some video for YouTube. And I started going to these podcamps and speaking at anyone I could possibly speak at. I think I was in Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Philadelphia. Like, I went to ones in the South. I went out west, one in California. I spoke at the New Media Expo in California. And some of these, like, I didn't have any money. Man, I was starting the process of like going through my divorce situation. And I remember getting invited to speak at the New Media Expo in, I think, Las Vegas. And I had like no money on me, but I was like, yeah, I'll speak there. So I think I got a ticket I was going to pay somebody back for. I got out to like Las Vegas and I just had a backpack on my back and like, I think $13 on me. I'd found like some change. I mean, I was really, really broke. Really broke. I was paying trying to pay child support and stuff and I just didn't have any cash. So I got up on stage and I gave my talk the day, because I flew in early that morning and gave my talk. And I remember like, I just had my backpack. I sit on the side of the stage. Afterward, I put my backpack back on. They didn't pay you to speak, right? It was an opportunity to get your stuff out there.
Right.
I remember just like sleeping in the hotel lobby that night, just kind of hanging out, avoiding getting kicked out of the place and being part of the conference. Kept dropping hints to people like, hey, you have any extra space in your hotel room? I could kind of crash to the floor to, people I was meeting and stuff, trying to find some place, and I never found anybody.
Didn't you buy lunch or dinner from one of those whirlwind dollar machines?
Oh, yeah.
Like you go in there and you grab as much cash as you can.
Those trade show floor machines where they get you to come to their booth, right, with some gimmick.
Right.
And the gimmick was there was like a tornado thing and there were dollar bills flying around. And you get
inside,
one shot.
It looks like an old style phone booth.
Yeah, it's like a wind tunnel.
Right. And you walk in, you close it, and then the wind starts up and like dollar bills are swirling around you.
I was so motivated.
And you're grabbing as many of them as possible in order to pay for dinner.
Shoving them on my shirt, right? Because I'm the speaker at this conference. And I'm like, I don't have any money to buy dinner that night. Like, that's how much I'm like buying granola bars and I'm just like making it work.
Way to hustle.
Yeah.
How much did you get out of that wind tunnel?
That's what, when younger people are like, life's so hard. It's so hard. I'm like, yeah, it's hard. You just do it. Like, yeah, it sucks. And you just do it. Like,
be an older Gen Xer like us and shove dollar bills in your pants so that you can eat that night.
I'm just like, I never understand. Like, younger people are just like, well, if all the circumstances are perfect, then I'll do it. And I was like, all right, whatever.
It's not just younger people. There's older people like that too.
People,
humans that complain about the hardness of life. So anyway.
Well, I do too. I complain about the hardness of life.
I'm constantly complaining about how hard life is, so I can sympathize.
Point is, I'm going around, I'm getting some traction.
You didn't answer me. How much money did you get in the wind tunnel?
I don't know. I mean, I want to say between $8 and $13 on top of the $8 and $13 I brought with me.
Was it enough to get dinner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like enough for a burrito at Chipotle. Maybe not now with inflation.
Right.
Back in 2007 or 2006, whenever I was doing this.
$13 went a lot further.
Yeah.
Back then.
Somehow I end up at my job I convinced them to let me go to ad tech in San Francisco in 2007 at the zoo. I'm running the media at the zoo, and I'm trying to get like videos started and stuff. And somehow there was a bunch of chaos, and people were getting fired above me at like the management level. So chaos is a ladder, according to Littlefinger. And I'm like, I put a proposal in to get to San Francisco, and I try to keep the costs as low as possible. So I pick a hostel to stay in. I'm going to go to the ad tech conference out there, which is like new media advertising and ad tech. And I'm out there on the zoo's dime, but like super dirt cheap dime, right? Like I'm bare minimum doing this. And I ran into at the conference, this guy's giving a talk about making money online by starting up a information business.
Right.
His name was Jason Van Orden at the time. No, well, probably still Jason Van Orden. But at the time, I was watching the presentation. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So somehow I got on his email list based on him giving this presentation because like he's like being successful about this. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I get his email list, and I've always been interested in business. So I start following him, and he mentions another person, this other guy, Yannick Silver, and I get on his email list, and he's talking about stuff. And then he mentions another person. I start following this guy named Eben Pagan, and immediately I'm blown away. Now, looking back in retrospect, a lot of intuitive things are coming from this guy and his teachings. He's talking about not only business and internet marketing and things like you can do on the internet, but he's talking about things like your mind control, how you can shift your mindset. He's talking about things like the Graves model or spiral dynamics. He's talking about things like the Enneagram personality type systems. I'm like, and the way he talked and presented the information, I was like, this is incredible. And he had a partner named Wyatt Woodsmall, who was a teacher of neuro-linguistic programming. He'd have on often. And he would have these guests on that could show you how to hack things. I mean, think like Alex Hormozy, but like way earlier, like business people or people that like could write a book in a weekend or like show you a technique for writing a full book in a weekend. That's before ChatGPT could just do it for you, right? Like you could do all these things. So you had like these people that could do like leverage hack things to get results faster, better, like natural health people. This is like a time period in the late 2000s that all this stuff's coming online. It's like people are starting to find alternative ways of doing things than maybe the traditional linear channeled ways we did them before, like podcasting instead of radio, as an example, or video instead of television, YouTube.
Right.
So I'm watching his stuff, and I'm like, I got to get to one of his conferences. I get out to one of his marketing, like business conferences. Somehow I got on a list. I got invited for free to this conference. Didn't have any money again, like late 2000s, and I'm figure out how to get out there again. I think I shared revenue. Me and a friend or some person I met online slept in like a Motel 6, really dirt cheap. And we made it happen. We got out there, and I was like training, and I'm learning how to do more internet marketing. I had already some marketing experience, but I'm like learning how to apply it to the internet. And I'm out there, and I find out he doesn't just do these conferences for business. He's doing these big 5-day conferences around human growth and personal growth. And I'm just like, as an ENFP, I'm like, this is right up my alley. And he had one called Mind Control he was going to do, which was talking about, how to take control of your mindset and all of this. He had one called The Master Map of Success, I think, which is about the Graves model, spiral dynamics. And I tried to go to both of those. I couldn't go to both of those.
I went to both of those.
You were both of those?
Wait, what was the one before the Master Map?
Mind Control.
Yep, I was at Mind Control too.
And and then one was coming up in the fall, in October for neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I got to go to this one. And, I have no money. I'm going through a divorce and a separation. It's just a mess. And somehow I'm thinking I got invited to speak that same weekend at another conference in Las Vegas. This was happening in Los Angeles. And I remember thinking, oh man, I should probably go speak at that new media conference to drum up business for my consulting business I'm trying to get off the ground. Because I got a day job, and then the evenings and weekends I'm hustling like crazy trying to get this consulting business going.
Right.
I should probably go speak, but something kept drawing me to this 5-day event. It was like $2,000. I don't have $2,000. They had payment plans, and it was clear in California. I can't get to California, but I probably could borrow something to get a plane ticket. I'm like, all right, well, for some reason, I'm going to go to this NLP conference. I end up flying out there, and I think, was it day 2 or 3? This young woman bounces up to me in this bubbly nature. Her name was Antonia Dodge, and she started conversing with me. And
Conversing with you is a nice way
Flirting.
of saying hitting on you.
Hitting on me, flirting with me. And I was completely smitten. And that's how I met you, actually.
Yep.
Well, actually, you invited me to go to Santa Monica that night. Or excuse me, I was going to go to Santa Monica that night. And you invited me to come to this raw food restaurant in Orange County in near Los Angeles. And I'm like, okay. And all these this conference is like a bunch of weird. Now I'm remembering, like, when people come to our events now, live events, I'm sure they have an experience like I had going into this. Like, what in the world are these people about? These are weirdos. They're into all this weird stuff like NLP and mind technologies and personality types. And I mean, it's right up my alley. I love it. But like, I'm like a Pennsylvania boy, pretty sheltered, not exposed to like Los Angeles, California culture, like drug scene at all. I remember getting in the car to go to this like Whole Foods restaurant with you or whatever it was.
Raw food vegan
restaurant. And the dude that's driving the car like just starts doing droppers of like drugs on the freeway in Los Angeles. And I'm like, am I going to die? You know, I'm like, I hadn't barely drank alcohol at that time. Am I going to die? Is this going to be terrible? Is this all going to, and you're like sitting in the front seat and you just turn around and start talking to me. And anyway, it was a wonderful dinner we went to that night and we hit it off. And I basically haven't been apart from you since that experience. But I trace it all back to this. And there were a bunch of steps between all of that.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I hadn't bought this and then gone searching for that new media podcast, where would I be sitting right now? Would I be having this conversation with you? I would hope so. But sometimes, if you ever do this, like you look back at your life at these key moments, key things that happen, and you're like, if that one thing hadn't happened, if my mom hadn't given me that gift card, if I didn't have a Walmart in my town for her to give me a gift card, if it hadn't been the time period of the new media stuff starting off and this, and if I hadn't heard about the pod camps, if I hadn't gone to pod camps to speak, if I hadn't gone to that ad tech conference and toughed it out and slept in the hotel lobby to where I heard about, something and then got to the other conference where I heard about stuff, like how would my life have turned out? Like every single thing had to happen in the fashion it did for me to be having this conversation with you. So I keep this little MP3 player to remind myself. It's almost a totem now in my life. I can hold it in my hand, and the entire reality I've created for myself started with this little white MP3 player. And it feels profound to me. I'm sure everybody else is like, okay, Joel, what a great story. But to me, I'm like, I bet a lot of us have these in our lives. Yeah. I bet you listening or watching right now could look back at some key moment, some totem, something in your life that informed where you are now, that you could look and go, that was the start of all of it. Like the cascading start. Now, I put a lot of effort in. Clearly, you have too, Antonia, to get to where we are now at 500 episodes, 9.5 years in. I would consider it a successful business, and we've helped a lot of people. And I think that's really cool. I think it's a cool experience that I appreciate getting the opportunity to tell the story about this MP3 player. You probably don't have a nice, tidy story like that, do you? Your life's just a ball of chaos, isn't it?
No, I have a story too, but my MP3 player is a pickup artist manual, so it's not as nice a story. I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, what would mine be? And I'm like, oh crap, mine's a pickup artist manual. Which, I mean, I wish it was as lovely, but it's just a friend of mine.
It's so weird. You're the woman here, and you came through a pickup. Artist manual.
The pickup
and
world.
I came through like MP3 media.
Only saying this because I have alcohol in me, but because I would never normally reveal this unless I was actually talking to the person, because it's so horrifically offensive to so many broads out there. But I had a good friend who had INTJ preferences and had some challenges with the ladies at the time. And so he started getting into pickup.
Which attracts a ton of introverted, intuitive thinker dudes.
Tons.
Because they're so awkward socially. Like, they feel awkward socially often.
Right.
And so they're trying to find, okay, how do I talk to women?
How do I hack this? How do I figure out what the mechanisms are, right? They're trying to find the system of it.
Yeah.
Completely understandable to me. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it always gets people where they want to go if you go too far down the rabbit's hole. But, I mean, just like with anything, there are certain principles that can be found in almost every, discipline and line of thinking that, is sometimes good and sometimes not good. So anyway, the point is that my friend who had INTJ preferences had this pickup artist manual. I won't name which one, but he had it, and he gave it to me. He was like, "This is really interesting. You should read it." And I went, "Okay." It's a long time. This is probably around the same time that you grabbed your MP3 player, and I read it, and it had some really it had like interesting perspective shifts that I had never thought of before about interpersonal dynamics. Because I had never thought of, I'm not sure why, but I had never thought of interpersonal dynamics as being like a whole science of things that could be studied and thought about and turned into an entire system. So even though I was already super into type, and that's effectively one of the uses of type. So so I started reading a little bit more about particularly evolutionary psychology, and just sort of getting into the applicable aspects of how the mind works and why. So, what is pre-programmed? What's pre-wired? What isn't? What is socialized? What, And I, I think that I probably at this point now would disagree with a fair number of things that I read in that original pickup manual. But at the time, it was so fascinating, and just the concept of it, and just the idea of it was so interesting that it sent me down this road that ended up very quickly in personal growth, because the person who was associated with it was associated with another person who was associated with Eben Pagan. And so Eben Pagan was how you and I met, right, at the NLP conference. So when I say I was at the other conferences, Mind Control, Master Map, I was at a leadership conference that he gave. That book led me to him through multiple hands, and he was my entrance into personal growth. And if it wasn't for that stupid pickup manual, and I would have never gotten introduced to Eben Pagan. And if I wasn't introduced to Eben Pagan, you and I wouldn't have met. So my little white MP3 player is a pickup manual, and so it's not as charming, but it's just as much of a butterfly flaps its wings story.
Yeah.
It's like just the choices that we make.
Well, and I think about like the universe, the alternate universe that I could be living in, had a different choice been made.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I think it's one of the exercises we give people when it's extroverted intuition or exploration week in our personality life path mentorship.
Yep.
We talk about doing a timeline, but we also talk about doing an alternative. Like where could your life had ended up had you made different choices?
Yeah.
And or maybe that's introverted sensing memory week. I can't remember which week.
No, it's extroverted intuition.
This
Like,
idea
name 5 different ways your life could have gone.
Yeah.
Had you made different choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the exercises. And then it's really designed to kind of reflect back on just how these possibility choices come in can alter an entire trajectory of where you're going.
Yep. The ultimate of chaos theory, basically.
Yeah. So I have a question. What are some things that you, again, I'm looking at this 500 episode almost like a time capsule for you and me.
Yeah.
And we're getting to publicly share it with you, listening or watching. But I'm not, I think over 499 episodes, we've been very focused on you listening or watching, making sure you take away great value. And I want you to take away value. But I'd love to hear maybe, Antonia, from you, and I'll also share mine too. If we could workshop or brainstorm, what are some things that you've learned over the last 9.5 years, 500 episodes doing this? Like, what are some key takeaways? I've learned, one is I've learned I can be consistent for 500 things and 500 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
I can do something consistently for 500 times. I didn't know that about myself at all. I think, if you have something readily available, I'll be quiet, but I can also talk. It's my radio training. Dead air. It's bad.
Well, I was about to talk and then you started talking again, so I assumed that you had something ready. You
Please.
had you had it loaded in the chamber.
No, please go. I actually don't, weirdly enough.
So I was going to say that's such a good question, because I feel like this last 10 years, this last decade has been okay, so I feel like before this time period of my life, before Personality Hacker really got going, because I've been doing Personality Hacker since 2010, right? And arguably since 2009, but it didn't officially become a thing until 2012. Like, that was when the LLC, right? It was 2012 when the LLC was registered. And then January of 2014 is when we started the podcast. So there's like the official embryo of the company, and then there's like the registered LLC, and then there's like the official like beginning. I believe the modern day iteration of Personality Hacker started with the podcast.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 sort of
It's like Starbucks. It started in like 1971, I think, as a roaster. But then when Howard Schultz took it over, I think in the early 80s, it became the modern Starbucks we know. It was not longer just a coffee roaster. It became like the Starbucks we know.
Or like McDonald's in Barstow, California, right? Like the McDonald's brothers
Is that where it was?
started.
Barstow?
I believe it was. I believe Barstow, California is the very first McDonald's. And I only know that because I'm from Victorville, or originally born in Victorville. So
California represent.
Yeah, but I'm Oregon all the way today. So I feel like there's like these multiple time periods of starting, but January 2014 really marks like the beginning of like something significant.
Yeah.
Before that, it all kind of felt like I was playing at it, or not playing at it, but just trying to get my legs under me. And it feels like from that point forward, I was gathering Lego pieces. Like my whole life, I've been sort of like gathering these Lego pieces, and not 100% sure what it's going to take form in later. I just know it's like, oh, that one, I'm going to need that one. Or life forces Lego pieces on me, right? It feels like my life gets destroyed, and the destruction of my life falls apart into all these Lego pieces, and then life goes, these are the ones you get to keep from the detritus, and I grab those and I take them with me. And so the last 10 years feels like I was finally able to take all of those pieces and turn them into something, like build something from it. And I wasn't 100% sure of the shape of the structure the entire time. I was just sort of piecing these Lego pieces together, going, that doesn't quite feel right, sort of instinctively. And I would say probably over the last year or two, I have the structure. I know what I'm supposed to be building in my lifetime. I didn't know before. I know now. And it feels really new and recent.
Almost like the podcast guided you there? Like,
it's definitely been a Lego piece.
Yeah.
Well, what the podcast did is it taught me in multiple things. Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to the podcast, not just Antonia Dodge's Lego piece land. But
that's okay too.
Yeah. So I think what the podcast did is, number one, it told me not to give two shits about other people's opinion, which I still kind of care about it. Like there's a lot of my brother says, and I've said this before on the podcast, but if you haven't heard it before, my brother, who is a very famous science fiction writer, says, if nobody's talking shit about you on the internet, it's because they've never heard of you. So there is a thing that all communities do, which is individuals, in order to puff themselves up and make themselves feel like they are an expert in an industry in which they have no power or influence and they have really no voice, they look for people who have a voice and they do their best to destroy them or take them down, right? To knock them down a peg. And this gives those people an inflated sense of superiority or credibility or whatever it is that they need. And so nobody wants to believe that their single opinion that they're throwing in the echo chamber of the internet is like actually meaningless pieces of digital data. They don't want to believe that. They want to think that they're like, and that makes sense because everyone wants to believe that they're good at what they're interested in. So there's noble and less noble ways of doing that. The noble way of doing that is offering help and assistance, right? And doing what you can to offer what you've learned in behalf of other people. And there's a commenter on our YouTube videos who does this almost like lots of our YouTube videos ends up with one of their comments. And I actually, weirdly enough, even though they're almost always disagreeing with us or like adding something that's in disagreement, I kind of appreciate them because I understand their intent. I can feel their intent. They're super into socionics. They wish everybody was into socionics. And I can feel the intent is very positive. It's like they want good things for other people. They just think everybody else is, misinformed. Not a problem, right? Throw a million of those at me every day, all day. That's fine. But then there's these people who like go around and like, that person's not that type. I mean, I've always said that my pet peeve is like running around telling everybody not the type that they think they are, particularly if they're an influencer or influential in this community. And I think it's because it's like it's as lowbrow as it gets, right? It's like let a person have their own journey. Allow them to figure out their best fit type over time. The other thing is that people who do this tend to not understand type development. They only understand type as a static thing, a static thing. Like it's like an image in their head. If you don't match this image in their head, there's no room for like growth and development over time. So if you're not, say, a chaos agent ENTP who has figured out the limitations of one's like quote unquote problem of psychological type, as Jung called it, if you cannot course correct, you cannot self-correct for your own preferences. You have to be that thing over time forever. So if you figured something out about yourself, like type-wise, like, oh, these are my preferences, but they're also kind of fucking me up a little bit, so maybe I should do something about that, and then you share that piece of information, and the person's like, you can't be that type because you're not this coloring book version of a type in my head, right? It's like there are so many people like that out in the type world, and you just have to not care about them. You just have to see them as people whose one little tiny comment they're really hoping will have like massive impact in the world, but really it might as well be like a castle in the sand. It's going away.
Yeah.
So what's the point of all of this if it's not us throwing all of our little digital statements at each other? The point is, are you helping people or aren't you? Are you having an actual impact or aren't you? And so what the podcast taught me is that there's going to be a ton of that coming my direction. There's going to be a ton of people telling me that I'm, like you'll make fun of librarians in the INFP podcast and we'll get a gajillion emails from angry INFP librarians. Or I'll make some like casual statement over here about something, and then I'll get all these like emails about how I'm not being a good whatever, right? Like I'm not doing that right. I think the podcast has gotten me to a place where I still don't have thick skin. And I'm like, why don't I have thick skin yet? And I think it's because I need to maintain sensitivity to do the work that I do best.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm never thick-skinned.
That's the tough part about the position we're in.
That's right. But I also need to understand that that people who are asserting these kinds of opinions are doing so from a dark room of not a lot of light. Like, oh, I saw this let's not even take me. Let's take somebody else, like a friend of mine. Like I saw this person, whoever the person is, maybe they're influential in the tech community.
Dario gets this all the time. Dr. Dario Nardi.
Our friend Dario, my friend Susan Storm. Like I have tons of friends in the type community who get this all the time. And they're like, well, I watched this video and they can't be because, some bullshit about facial, they weren't looking up the way that they were supposed to look up, or they, or like some BS about something. An INTJ would never do this, and, an ENTJ would never do this, and ENTP would never do this. And it's like, well, you don't really understand humans, do you? You might understand type, but you don't understand humans, and you certainly don't understand personal development. So that's a very dark room from which, like, all of these, I would almost call them accusations, because that's what they are. They sound like accusations, right? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, okay, let's pretend you're totally right. Anonymous random person who doesn't even have your real name in the handle. Like, let's pretend you're totally right. So now what do? Let's make the world a better place, starting from, tell me what that is. Okay, you're right. Everybody's been mistyped. How do we make the world a better place? Oh, we just make everybody's type accurate. Okay, done. Everybody's type is accurate. Dario Nardi's I don't know, whatever they think he is, right? ENFP is usually it. And I'm whatever people think I am. ESFJ, ESTJ, ESFP sometimes, or whatever. Like, whatever you think all of this is, let's just rearrange the pieces on the chessboard. And now how do we make the world a better place? Right? So what the podcast has taught me is a real distinction in the DIKW model.
Yeah. Data,
information, knowledge, and wisdom. Data is knowing what, let's just take introverted sensing. Data is knowing that introverted sensing is a thing and that it's, like its qualities and characteristics. Information is knowing that ESTJs have introverted sensing as an auxiliary or co-pilot function. That's information, right? It's like figuring out what to do with that data. Knowledge is realizing that introverted sensing is an auxiliary function, and in Dr. John Beebe's model, as a parent function or associated with parent archetype energy, is going to show up most often in helping other people. So introverted sensing or memory is going to be in like a parent role for an ESTJ. That's knowledge, right? And applying that and going, maybe I should self-parent with introverted sensing, and maybe I should be applying this to myself. And how How would this look if I like helped other people out with this? Blah, 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 blah. And wisdom is knowing when introverted sensing or memory is the wrong tool for the job. Like that's not the thing you should be using right now, right? Even though it's your parent function, let it go and use something else because that's not the right tool for the job. Okay. Data, information, knowledge, wisdom, DIKW. And I think what the podcast has taught me is a very clear distinction between all of these things based on responses from podcast listeners.
Yeah.
Because I can tell when somebody is in a data relationship with type. I can tell when they're in an information relationship with type. I can spot when they're in a knowledge relationship with type. That's rarer. And the most rare is when they're in a wisdom relationship with type. Because at the point of wisdom, it's harder to type people, or in our vernacular, profile, right? Actually have a conversation, understand the human, not just like type them from a distance and go, I watched this one video, and so therefore I know everything about them. It's like, no, you actually are having a conversation with the person and understanding who they are, right, in their own language and their own words, and they're telling you how their mind operates. But when you get to that level, it's a really hard thing to do because there aren't 16 people on the planet. There's billions of people on the planet, and we all manifest our type differences a little differently, like in a very unique way.
Yeah.
And so
our personality is more than our Myers-Briggs type.
You got it. Our whole, there's a concept called whole self. Okay, whole self. And my type preferences are a part of my whole self. You have to understand my story. You have to understand that I was, as somebody with ENTP preferences, I was raised in a cult. How did that change me? Are all ENTPs raised in cults? Most of them are not. What does an ENTP look like when they are raised in a cult and one that is not raised in a cult? How's the differences, right? So on and so on and so on. So, I really, like, the podcast has taught me to hold loosely people's opinions, people's desires, to be the, like, I'm the authority, so I'm going to say this thing that makes me the authority. And it's like, well, you're only an authority when you're an authority. Nobody who's a king has to say they're a king. Yeah. Okay, so it's like you are an authority when you're an authority, not when you just assert something. And podcasting, because I've observed this and it's kind of rubbed me the wrong way and frustrated me and irritated me and gotten me all hot and bothered and like irritated, like become a thing. There's a point where I think I had to do a lot of self-reflection and go, don't become one of those people. Don't become them. Right? Like as a podcaster, you could sit on an ivory in an ivory tower on a throne and go, I know what I'm talking about and everybody needs to listen to me. But what is actually going to move the needle? What is going to help people get to a place of knowledge and wisdom?
Well, and that's it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm on a rant, so go cut me off.
And that's a little frustrating, is because I've noticed people more. You're not even done with what you got.
No, I'm mid rant. So if you're going to cut me off, you have to give me more wine.
Certainly. Okay. Here, let's do it.
All right.
I would say that is that good for now?
Yeah.
Finish this whole bottle of wine between the two of us.
Hey, it's 500 episodes.
I'm not being critical.
Are we not in a massively self-indulgent mode?
Yeah, I mean, we dropped the F-bomb. We've said shit a couple times. Ooh. I'm about to put like an explicit tag on this.
Explicit tag.
Both on YouTube and on iTunes for this.
Oh, got real aggressive about all these people who run around and like, you're not the type you think you are. Yeah, well, guess what? You don't know me. I've got 500 podcasts out. Go listen to them.
First of all, this doesn't bother me at all. In fact, I like when people guess wrongly about me. Because I know who I am.
Because introverted feeling or authenticity is higher up for you. For me, I'm like, it's seventh function. Stop rubbing me in the wound.
I'm like, you don't know me that well and get it right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's a win if people miscategorize me, or
I know
they think they know me and put me in a box that, I'll surprise them, is what I tell myself.
Well, it's because you can now manipulate them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I even do it on purpose sometimes.
Yeah.
I let people mistakenly believe things about me on purpose. I have no problem doing that. Like, I don't mind if people think I'm dumber than I am or whatever.
Sometimes you actively try to do it. Like, you make people think you're dumber than you are so that you can get them later.
Well, or just because I think it's
just
funny.
To mess with them.
It's just funny. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, the point is, it's like a cat playing with a mouse.
For those of you super into type DI trickster.
It is. The thing you said about, speaking with authority and with all this stuff, and I mean, that's a secret, right? Like, I've seen a lot of people online that don't know what they're talking about, but say it with such authority that people are like, you must know what you're talking about. And I'm like, but they're inaccurate. And I like freak out. And I'm like, it's hard for me to speak with such authority about something definitively.
Yeah.
Because the answer is it depends. I mean, that's the real answer.
Yeah.
But the answer, it depends, does not a business make.
Nope.
Or does not a channel or success make.
Nope. You have to talk like you're absolutely certain.
And I see people say things that are wildly inaccurate with such certainty. And people are like, thank you so much for saying this. Someone finally said it. And I'm like, what? That resonated with you? Are you out of your mind? All they did was say it with certainty. And I think that's really what I've learned in this podcast is this idea of certainty. I mean, I think that I would say certainty and uncertainty drive us as humans more than anything else on the planet. Like,
it's a big one.
I mean, it's not more than anything else on the planet.
Yeah.
But it's a big node in many of our systems.
Yep.
And when we affect it, when we sound like we're certain,
yep.
people are like, "Oh, you must know what you're talking about."
Yep.
And it undermines me because I am more certain than I come across, but I'm always worried that I'm going to be too certain and someone's going to do something I say or listen to me too fully and not vet it for themselves. I'm like, no, you don't know me that well. You should vet this.
Yeah.
That actually go the opposite way.
Yeah.
I create more hesitancy. I hedge things.
Yeah.
I don't speak with authority and certainty because I don't want somebody to base something off in their life and go make a choice. Well, Joel Mark Witt said on a podcast that if I'm this type, I should do this thing. Yeah. And yet I'm looking around going, man, other people get a lot more traction when they speak this way, but I just can't do it because, I mean, I want to do it more, but I also want to be really accurate because I don't want to mislead anyone.
Well, here's the noodle scratcher, though, on all of this is, and this is what I figured out.
The noodle scratcher?
Yeah.
Is that a technical NT term?
Yes, it's a medical term, noodle scratcher. So here's the noodle scratcher on all of it.
But it's great.
Is it doesn't matter. Right. And then somebody's going to go, that's how I know she's extroverted thinking. That's how I know she's blah, 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 blah. Okay. So yes, I'm exactly the type you think I am. You figured it out. You're so smart. No, what I figured out is life is filled with paradoxes. And whatever you think is empirically true is also simultaneously not true. So it is important to be accurate. It is incredibly important to be accurate. And it's important to be pedantic, and it's important to go down rabbit holes of definitions of words, and it's important to understand all of the little intricacies of type, if that is the thing you're into, while simultaneously it doesn't matter at all. So a person who is, let's say they've got a whole business talking to a certain personality type, coaching them, saying all of these like flattering things about them and making somebody of this personality type feel like really like, that's right. I am a magician, and that's right, I am incredible, and that's right, I am like all of these amazing things because I'm this type, and then I can see inside people's brains, or I can see into the future, I can blah, 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 blah. Let's pretend the person who's saying this is not the type they're purporting, and none of the people who are visiting them are the type they're purporting. But if comment after comment after comment is, this has helped me so much, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because they were moving the needle in somebody's life. And we have to assume, or we have to give people the honor and respect to believe that they're free moral agents. And when something has stopped serving them, they'll recognize it and they'll move on. So if somebody at that time needs to believe they're a certain personality type, whatever that is, and they need to believe that the person who's flattering them around it is giving themselves, is telling them all these great things about this personality type that they actually aren't anyway. And at the other side, they get a sense of self and they get a sense of personal permission to be themselves or a more authentic version of themselves. And they walk away with some tools and strategies and like some ways of interacting with life that give them more empowerment and confidence and assertiveness through the world. Then all the other stuff, all the other content was just, it didn't matter. Like all of that stuff was just there to supplement the work that really needed to be done, which is that this person needed to, they needed to make peace with themselves. They need to accept themselves.
Yeah.
And so if there was like a great God in the sky and their official scorecard was filled with the accuracy of Myers-Briggs types or personality types, and the more types you got right, the more you got access to heaven. And the more types you got wrong, the further you were to going to a fiery Gehenna hell. Like, yeah, then there would be some weight on all this, and this would be like a real big deal.
Yeah.
But what is this all for anyway? And I think the reason why I've harped on this in multiple different places, the reason why I talk about this, like, it doesn't matter about being pedantic about type. Do you know why I say that? I say that because guess who was super pedantic about type for a super long time until all of a sudden it didn't matter anymore. Like, all of a sudden I was like, I'm hitting glass ceiling. Why am I hitting glass ceiling? Oh, because I'm allowing the pedantic nature of my introverted thinking to hold me back. I actually need to see that there's a paradox here. There's a paradox that accuracy is important and also it doesn't matter. Simultaneously, both those things are true.
Yeah.
So how do you hold both those things? By trying to be as accurate as possible while at the same time letting it go if accuracy is the wrong tool for the job at that moment. If somebody's coming to you seeking help and guidance and wisdom and a sense of certainty or self-confidence, well, you know what? Maybe type is that's just the thing that we're using to be one degree of separation from the self so that we can not make everything so personal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just an on-ramp. What if that's the case? What if there's nothing empirically true about it? What if it's just an on-ramp?
Yeah.
So, and I think both those things are true. I think type is true, and I think it's untrue at the same time.
Yeah.
So what this podcast has done is it's put me in the path or given me an opportunity to get like ridiculous amounts of feedback. It's also given me very positive feedback. I get like so much positive feedback. It's crazy. I've made amazing friends, incredible human beings through this podcast. People who've been listeners before who are now people I connect with on a regular basis.
Christian Rivera, who's going to be editing this very podcast.
That's right, Christian.
Hi, Christian. Thank you for all your
We love you so much.
amazing work. You've probably seen him if you've ever watched one of our live shows. You probably like live episodes in front of a studio audience. He's come on a couple times.
He's our creative director. He's incredible.
And I'm going to get him more. I want to get him more incorporated on this too. Probably
That's
in next coming episodes.
Yep.
He's going to be in town here visiting us, and I
Yep.
want to get him in the studio recording.
Yep.
We met him through this. I mean,
That's right.
he was a listener and he reached out, and now he works with us.
That's right.
And I could say that story over and over again for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of people that have come into our lives because we took the initiative to put something on the internet. They heard it. They resonate with it.
That's right.
Now we're working together or connected in some way. I mean, you might be listening right now. You might be a client student of ours, and you heard us through the podcast. And now you're maybe a profile or training student, or you're in our personality life path mentorship, or you got an owner's manual for your personality type.
Yep.
And you're going down a road of growth for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yep.
I think that's the other thing too I've learned is there's like two primary factors. There's people that this is like a hobby, an interest in a hobby, and they're really, you know, the particulars of getting everything right and all of that. There's like this hobbyist framework. And I love hobbyists. I mean, they make up a lot of our audience. But they're not necessarily focused, some are, but
Right.
they're not necessarily focused on using it in more of a helpful way toward, you know, helping people improve certain aspects
You
of
mean
their
growth and development.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily growth people.
Yeah, they're not, but it doesn't invalidate what they're into, and it
Of
doesn't
course
validate
not.
them as listeners to the show, and it
Of course
doesn't
not.
validate the fact that they love type.
Yeah.
And I would welcome a hobbyist, and I think
Yeah.
there's the other avenue of people that are like, well, how can I I smell power here.
Mhm.
Because I will tell you that
You mean in type?
power here
specifically?
to help me in my life.
You're talking. Sorry.
So
I-
hobbyists versus like people
Okay.
that want to apply it to the self.
So it might be the one affecting me, but you're talking about like the different reasons why people get into type. And so I'm hearing you say that over here, there's like people who are just kind of intrinsically interested in it and it's a
Mhm.
hobby.
Yeah.
And then a second faction of people are people who like perceive that there might be power woven into
Yeah,
the system.
to apply to me. Maybe it helped them. I think when we had Carol Linden, the president of the Association of Psychological Type International, on our stage 2 months ago,
Yeah.
she was talking, you know, we had her representing the boomer generation, and she was talking about how this impacted her life so much.
Yeah.
She's a person that kind of started off with a little bit hobbyist, but then she ended up making a career, which is, I think, is the third category. People that want to apply this in like a business fashion or career fashion.
Careers.
So 3 different people. And I think that all the people are welcome in that. It's just people are in different places. So I look at it, somebody making a comment like that, you're not this type, you're not that type. It's like, well, that's probably a hobbyist that's just kind of figuring this out. And I might dismiss
Right.
them too quickly. And I don't mean to be arrogant about it, but I'm like, oh, they're just probably figuring this out. They don't know enough yet to know that they're embarrassing themselves by making this comment. That's okay, though. How many times have I embarrassed myself by making
Yeah.
dumb comments
Yeah.
when I was learning podcasting? Like,
Right. Heck, you might have done it on a stage.
I probably did. Like, I know I did. Like, I
With
made
dollar bills shoved up your shirt.
I made dumb comments and like uncalibrated things, and I learned later. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that was a little embarrassing. Okay, well, I know more now. And
Right.
I thank God no one, got on my case like, you don't know how it works, and got
Right.
it in my face about
Right.
it, or made me feel bad about it.
Yeah, people
So
give a little bit of space for some dipshittery.
so when I see somebody make a comment about like, oh, you can type people with facial, the way their face and their body language is like, okay, I'm not going to make fun of you or belittle you. I'm just going to be like, okay, I mean, that's where you're at. Like
Yeah.
and maybe you can. I'm not saying you can't.
Maybe you can.
I can't.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot of people that I've seen demonstrate it reliably
Well,
yet, but maybe it is true that you can do that.
I'll say
I'm not
this.
saying it's untrue.
There
It
are
just isn't useful to helping people in like in a coaching way.
Exactly.
For me right now.
Exactly. I was going to say there are trends.
Sure.
There are trends of body language and faces.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
Yeah.
There's like certain things like I've noticed that NTPs have a tendency when they're just like recalling a memory. Like all of us do this though. We learned this in NLP that we're all wired to look certain directions in order to recall certain things. But like when like I'm probably doing it now because I'm trying to look for a thought, but it's like or a word. But it's like tends to be an NTP thing. I've noticed. I don't notice anybody else's stuff, by the way. I only notice NTP stuff, which is why I never could do body language or any of that stuff to type because I'm just not paying attention to anybody else's stuff, just my own. But
There's no feedback with it either.
yeah,
To know
there's
if
no
you're
feedback.
accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you
But
look up to the left because you're an INTP?
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
how could you ever verify
How
that
would
you're
you know?
right?
But NTPs have a tendency to kind of look back and forth when they're like figuring something out. I've noticed that about NTPs. I've also noticed that NEs. I think this is more NTPs than NFPs because NFPs are more kinesthetic as a general rule, so they're more in the body. But I've noticed that NTPs walk with a lightness, like a bounce, without the benefit of extroverted sensing's sort of groundedness.
Grace.
Yeah, grace. So there's this kind of like weird bounce that NTPs do. Like I've noticed this in both INTPs and ENTPs where it's like you have to, if you want to walk with power and grace as an NTP, you have to make it a discipline. You have to kind of focus on it and go, this is the thing I'm going to master. I've not mastered it. I've not mastered my body language at all, but I have because I'm a sexual subtype in Enneagram. I've definitely put some thought into how I'm being presented at any given time. And so my walk is one of those, but I also know that I probably do the same thing, which is a little bit of it's an NE bounce. It's not an SE bounce. It's like a light trot with kind of almost like your feet are sort of behind you. Almost like your NE is moving you through space. So, but here's the deal. I've also seen the NTPs not do that.
Yeah.
So that's why the body language thing and the facial recognition thing, I don't think is dead on. It's like there's trends there, but there's not rules.
Well, I think it could be definitely a node in the system of information.
Yes. Yes.
But
exactly.
if you're relying on that alone,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, and to go back to this podcast,
Yeah.
the dialogue of us having a conversation, it's very human.
Yeah.
And to just look and observe somebody and their behavior from a distance feels very inhuman to me.
Yeah.
Now I'm bearing out my personality type. I get
Yeah.
it. Every time I make something, I'm like, well, that's a very NFP thing to say, isn't it? But it is kind of how I feel. It's like, it's very inhuman to look at somebody and say, well, you're this because I observed it.
Yeah.
It's all about me and my ego and telling you what you are.
Right.
And I've got my own arrogance and ego. Like, I want to sit back and on this podcast and be like, and this person's an idiot for that. And this is dumb. And it's so hard not to want to do that. But I realize that I'm me and I'm not the god of the universe. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And so I try to lean back and go, people have their own experience. I don't know everything. But I love the idea of a conversation because I think a conversation allows me to connect with another person, regardless if I get their type correct or not, which we have a methodology that we teach in our profiler training course that you have a conversation about an hour, hour and a half, and you can help somebody arrive at their best fit type. We have a whole discipline around it. We've been teaching it since like 2012, right? 2011. I mean, even before the podcast, we've been teaching profiler training.
Yep.
It's a powerful program. A lot of people have gone through it. And I love it because it's focused on the conversation.
Yeah.
It's focused more on being human with another human than it is on getting their type right, although getting their type right as a result of that. And that's what I love about it. Just like this podcast is about a conversation. We're in a dialogue, not a dialogue like you'll hear people talk about in culture, like it's starting important conversations and dialogues in the world. about social issues or something. Like the ongoing meta dialogue is what they're referencing. I'm not talking about a meta dialogue. I'm talking about like a literal conversation with another person, another human being.
Yeah.
That is a powerful thing. And the art of conversation is, I think it's under threat. I don't think people know how to have a good conversation anymore. First of all, I'm surprised at how many people are just socially awkward at all having any conversation, let alone a good conversation.
Well, people need things to be screened digitally first before they'll have an analog real life conversation.
And that's troubling to me because I think that's the basis of our humanity, of being able to relate with each other without a digital barrier.
Yeah.
And I know it's scary. I know it could be, I mean, I get nervous talking to certain people sometimes and shy. It's not always, as ENFP as I am, I'm not always like, yay, I want to talk to everybody and I'm super outgoing. I often can find strategies to get over that, but I know people are shy or resistant, but there's something so powerful about talking to another human, another person. And if you add the layer of type on top of it, personality type on top of it, well, now that's a really powerful, now you've got like almost a framework for conversation, to have a conversation with somebody and help them arrive at the best fit type.
I think that we're scared of conversations with other people, not for what they'll bring, but for what they will bring out of us.
Maybe.
Like we're actually, the reason why we are more socially awkward now is because we want to see ourselves as better. Like everybody has this.
Well, online we can curate and make it perfect.
Yes.
Before we hit publish.
You got it. Online we can curate exactly what we want to say.
But the moment I say something here, I can't unpublish. It's already published.
Yep.
You've heard it. It's done.
Yeah. There's no edit button. There's no smudge tool. There's no whatever. And the real world, the analog world, brings out all of our flaws. And most people are fleeing their flaws.
Yeah.
And I think.
Well, you can see why you get punished for having any flaws so hard.
Yep.
You said this thing 10 years ago on Twitter, or you're getting canceled, whatever. Yeah. Like, it's like, you can't, there's no space in the public domain.
Yeah.
And this is why, this idea of privacy, people are like, what? If you're not doing anything wrong, why does it have to be private? It's like, because people judge neutral things all the time.
Yeah, they judge shit that isn't a problem all the time. They're constantly judging things.
Because people judge neutral things, I want privacy. Because people aren't responsible with things that shouldn't be judged in the first place.
Yeah, people are terrible at judging things.
So the point is that the analog world is messy. There's a bunch of mistakes. We're human. We're going to not be perfect all the time. We're going to say stupid stuff. We're going to say offensive stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to say bad stuff.
And
we're going to say mean stuff.
We're going to say stuff we don't even mean.
Yeah, and we're going to go, you know what? I was kind of a jerk back there. I'm really sorry I said that. That was actually inappropriate for me to say. Oh, no, it's recorded. I have it now forever.
Yeah.
You can't say you're sorry and get out of it.
And
sorry. It's
that's the beauty of an analog world, is that it's not recorded forever.
Yeah.
You get to say a stupid thing and then the person can hold it against you if they want to as an individual, but it's not like they necessarily
bring it up over and over.
That's right. It's not like it's going to ruin your life. And that's actually the beautiful thing about an analog psyche to psyche experience, is that you can actually confront your imperfections without believing that they're going to destroy your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to go back to the point of origin, by the way, are we doing another high podcast? Are we like buzzed and so just not paying attention? It's like 4 hours now.
I don't know how long we've been going. We're going for a bit of time.
Okay, so
I will need a quick bio break soon.
Okay, we should probably wrap it up soon. Excuse me. Oh my gosh.
You're even burping into the mic. That's how bad
I burped on camera. So in the mic. What did we learn from the podcast? So the first one is, I would say, okay, the more accurate way of saying it, and I'm saying this on like a glass and a half of wine, and if you know anything about me, you know that I am like the most sort of like poster child lightweight that ever existed. So like one glass of wine is a lot for me. So this is Celebration 500 podcast. I'm giving myself permission to drink more than one glass of wine and try to say things that are relevant.
It's Oregon wine. It's the wine of your people.
It's the wine of my people. So, what did I learn from the podcast?
Even though you're born in California.
Even though I was born in California.
You've been adopted to Oregon.
Listen, I moved there at 9. I think I'm an Oregonian. I've lived most of my life in Oregon.
Is your mom from Oregon?
Yes, okay, both my parents are from Oregon. My mom is she was born in Salem. My dad is from Forest Grove, Oregon.
Their dad was from Chicago.
He was born there, but they moved when he was 1.
Oh, okay.
He was born in Chicago, but they moved when he was 1 year old to Forest Grove, and he spent his entire life in Forest Grove, Oregon. I think he's from Oregonian. And both my brother and my sister were born in Portland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure.
You're the only Californian out of the bunch.
That was just incidental. They just happened to be in California at the time. So anyway, not that Oregon's a particularly cool place to be from anymore, but there was a time. There was a time. So what did I learn from the podcast? The first one is don't like how to deal with feedback. I've learned how to deal with feedback, what to take seriously and what not to. And as the feedback is coming, to realize that if people are giving negative feedback, they're not trying to hurt anybody. They're trying to heal themselves, and they're just going about it in a bad way. Like what they're trying to do is they're trying to make peace with their own egos.
It's not about you.
It's not about me.
It's about them.
It's totally about them.
Yeah.
So understand that. And the same thing goes, if I apply that to the negative, I've got to apply that to the positive too. It's about them.
Yeah.
It means that I was a catalyst for either something negative or positive in somebody's life, but it's really about their experience that they're having.
Yeah.
And that has been a major, I mean, it's hard. You would think after nearly a decade of doing this, I would get really, really, really philosophical and good about this. But here's the deal. If I'm highly resourced and I'm doing all the things, I've got all my SI routines, introverted sensing routines and rhythms all set up and everything's going well, it is water off the duck's back. I don't even think about it. But if I'm under-resourced, if, say, I had a massive life shakeup and I'm moving and all of my introverted sensing routines are all thrown off.
It's all hypothetical, by the way.
All hypothetical. This couldn't possibly,
this couldn't possibly be our last few months.
This is not my life. What are you talking about?
This is just theoretical conversation here.
Totally theoretical. If that theoretical situation were to happen, I take it super personally because it's not about them, it's about me.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the thing. Like the podcast,
we're all about ourselves.
The podcast has taught me how much about ourselves we are, including me. Yeah. Right? Is that it? Did we polish it off?
I just finished the bottle of wine. Well, I'm about to finish it.
All right.
I just poured the rest of it in.
Okay, fair enough.
How much? That's a lot of wine for two people, isn't it? I don't feel anything. Right? I mean, I don't think I feel anything.
You're 6'2". Of course you don't feel anything. I'm 5'2". Of course I feel everything.
It's got 13. I think it's 13% volume.
It's normal for wine. Okay.
Oregon wine is more potent, right?
No.
Willamette Valley wine.
False. Wine is wine.
It's got volcanic ash that gives it a supercharge.
It gives it a good flavor, but it's not any more potent.
Right.
Okay, so back to the thing I was talking about. Because I don't know why. Because I feel like we have to land the plane.
Yes, we do. Keep going.
This is a terrible podcast. This should
a great
be
podcast.
This should be one of the ones that we throw away.
This is the best podcast we recorded this week.
That's facts.
I promise you. I promise you.
And as I'm sure you, dear listener, who is no longer with us, can infer, it is the only podcast we've recorded this week. So it has taught me how to deal with feedback. And here's the other thing it taught me, or at least it guided me to. Like I was talking about those Legos like a long time ago, Antonia's Legoland. I think the podcast was the platform upon which, if I listen to early episodes, it's hard for me to listen to them because of the energy I put in. I feel like I'm way more chill at this point. I feel like I'm way more comfortable with a microphone and being on stage and all those other things. Even though I had a lifetime of experience of being on stage, there was still a formality to it.
Yeah.
Because there was always like a school situation that I was a part of or some sort of formal discipline. And now I feel a lot more chill vibe. I feel a lot more comfortable in all of these platforms. Maybe even a little too chill vibe. Like I probably should be work harder to be more interesting, but
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's right. Be a more interesting person, Antonia Dodge. I thought you were an ENTP.
Preach it, sister.
Clearly, you're not an ENTP because we all know ENTPs are interesting. So therefore, you must be some other type.
That's right.
And I'm going to write out an entire paragraph about what type you are because you don't know. So, not that that's a callback or anything. So, there's a comfort that I've gotten in front of mics and on stages because the podcast led to us doing live events. The live events were me on a stage. Me on a stage meant that I had to get really comfortable with that context. And then eventually that led to, there was a 5-day Profire training event. We almost always do a bonus event on the Sunday after.
The 6th day.
Right, the 6th day. So Tuesday through Saturday is the 5-day Profire training live event. Which, by the way, if anybody's listening and you haven't come to one of those and you're into type, you really should.
Profire training is pretty amazing.
Profire training is an incredible program, and it's only even sort of commensurate to personality life path, which is my other favorite thing to do. I love personality life path. It is one of my favorite. Like I get excited every week when we do it. I get excited for every personality life path live event because it's just
Well, you watch people change.
It's the bomb. It's just
You
incredible.
watch people's lives, literally, like you and me facilitating it. Watch people change their lives in real time.
Incredible.
It's one of the best things.
I love PLP, Personal Life Path, but I also love PT, Profile Training. And for a long time, we'd have a guest speaker on the 6th day. But one year, we were supposed to have, I think it was Dario that was supposed to be there. So we scheduled the 6th day. And we got it all set up at the hotel. But he couldn't be there. I think he was in Norway, and I think it was like a COVID-related thing or something, and he just couldn't be there. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Or what are we going to do? And I thought about it, and I had really gotten into Dark Night of the Soul stuff. I had gotten into Carl Jung's work around shadow and all that stuff and the 4 archetypes. And we had just started coaching with Dr. John Beebe.
When you say coaching, you and I hire him.
Yeah.
Meet with him at least once a month.
Yeah.
To work with us.
That's right.
To study with him. Because he's a Jungian analyst. He's been this way for 40, 50 years?
Yeah. If you are familiar with cognitive functions, you have John Beebe to thank.
So we went straight to the source. We're like, thank you for bringing this to the type world.
That's right.
We want to work with you, and can you be mentors? Can you be our mentor?
That's right.
So we've hired him to be our mentor, basically.
And it's been game changing because even though I was very familiar with his 8-function model before, I've known the 8-function model for 10, 15 years, 10 years probably, at least. But I never got it. I saw it taught in a lot of different places, but nothing quite felt right. It all felt like a really tidy model. It wasn't until we started talking to John that we understood it in its clinical psychology application that I started to get it, really get it. Now, maybe that's just my limitation. Maybe other people can get it in a way better way. But for me, I had to talk to John.
Because John's a terrible writer.
No,
John, he's not a terrible writer. His writing is, how do I say it? That's my wine talking. He's not a terrible writer. He's a very dense, it's a very difficult material to get through and understand.
It's very referential to a lot of different media.
And when you talk to him, he can contextualize it in real time.
That's right.
And you're like, oh, okay, that's what you're writing.
Yep.
So, John, you're not a terrible writer. If you're watching this, you're not a terrible writer. Your writing is difficult to get through, and talking to you makes it make sense.
I'll just say that I understood him a lot more when I was talking to him one-to-one.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
He's an orator.
He's an orator, and he's a brilliant man, by the way. And we have people in the type world do not know how much gratitude they have to give to John, because people in the type world right now just think that functions and type are synonymous.
Now I'm super insecure. I said, John, you're a terrible writer. Is John, it the wine talking?
John knows how much we love him.
I'm terrified that he's going to watch this.
No.
Or somebody he knows him and be like, do you know what Joel said about you in your writing? I'm like, I'm really worried.
Don't worry. John knows we love him.
Okay.
Because we do. We adore him. We adore John.
I'm sorry, John. I said anything.
Okay. So anyway, get over it. He's fine. So, John is the person who reintroduced functions into the type world. And he's why you, the person listening right now, he's why you know what functions are.
1987, I think. 87, 88.
Yeah.
Carol Linden, the president of APTI, said.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, because I knew Carl Jung first. Here's the thing. Jungian analysts, they know about cognitive functions because of psychological types, but they do not understand how it interfaces with Myers-Briggs because they're not type people.
John bridged those two worlds.
He bridged it. That's right. He was the person. And even though Isabel writes about it in Gifts Differing, she does not make any fanfare about it at all. And it's just like a call-out box every once in a while. So John really is the person that we have to thank. So we're trying to figure out what to do on that 6th day.
Yeah.
Because Dario couldn't come. And we'd been doing this work with John. And I had been, he had helped me understand things I'd read in Jung's works, but I hadn't, there's just something about talking to somebody who's used Jung's work as a clinical psychiatrist for 50 years that you just can't get when you're trying to piece it all together yourself.
Yeah.
So in the conversation with him, I really understood the 4 archetypes, the 4 Jungian archetypes of persona, ego, shadow, and whole self. Or at least I was starting to understand them. Still not at a place where I feel like I'm getting more and more sophisticated for sure. But at that time, I was starting to get it. So I chose to use that 6th day for what you just mentioned, which was a program that I call Encounter with Self. And so it was the first time that I walked people through sort of a self journey of their own relationship to their persona, their ego, their shadow, and their whole self through journal prompts and conversations.
Yeah.
And that was really awesome. That was amazing. And it was so good that I decided to do it the next event. We didn't have anybody for the next event either. So I did it for that event too. And on that one, real shit started to come to the surface, like real stuff. And like stuff that I had realized that through the podcast as a platform, and then through live event and stage experience, and then through our mentorship and coaching and my private practice of coaching, all of those Lego pieces started to build a structure so that that second version of Encounter with Self, it was in Florida, remember?
Which is the third state for our numbers.
That's
of
right,
most
third state for
listeners.
numbers. That's right. I felt like I was channeling from the universe. I felt like it wasn't really me that was making any shifts in other people. I felt like I was just a conduit, a vessel, as religious folk would say. And at that point, I went, this is the thing, we should be doing this more. And that's when we started Personality Life Path. And Personality Life Path is now the place where we do massive energetic shifts. We spend 8 weeks on Zoom, right? Going every week through a different cognitive function and recognizing our relationship with it. But then at the live event, that's when the real work starts. That's when we're really doing stuff. And that's what I was born to do. And I had absolutely no idea. And I would have never known had, number one, I not written a pickup manual and you purchased a cheap little white 1 gig podcast player. Had you and I not gotten together, had you and I not started a podcast, had you and I not stuck with it for 10 years, I would have not known that that's the thing I'm born to do.
Yeah.
And
well, and it didn't. I mean, years into grinding that out.
Yeah.
You figured that out for yourself.
Yes. And what the podcast taught me, so here's the number 2 thing. The number 1 thing is hold people's feedback loosely, good and bad. The number 2 thing that the podcast taught me is sometimes it takes grinding it out for years and years and years, maybe even a decade, before you figure out the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
But you still need to work on instinct. Like, it's like you still need to be following the path that's like, this is the thing I should be doing now. This is the thing I should be doing now. And how does one know that? Well, the thing one should be doing now is you have to be audacious about listening to your inner voice. Like there's an audacity there of being willing to listen to yourself when the discrete voices are telling you, do this, don't do that, move here, follow this person, like hit on this person in an NLP conference. Like,
I'm glad you listened to that voice.
Yeah, there's like an audacity to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like not everybody listens to their inner voice because, like you said, certainty and uncertainty rule so much about us that if something is a quiet inner voice, it's like, well, I can't be certain about it. It's like, well, you don't have to be certain. You just have to listen. Like you just have to. You have to be willing to take the risks. What does our friend Jonathan always say? High risk, high reward. It's like you have to be willing to take risks, and not risks of like doing dangerous shit, but risks of doing things that might have been the wrong call, because there's plenty of times that I've done the wrong thing. And I've done the wrong thing so many times. I've spent years playing cleanup on the wrong thing. In the early parts or early times of Personality Hacker, we got involved in a business venture that took 2 years to clean up. 2 years.
Yeah.
It cost us 2 years of traction. Now, that wasn't an inner voice saying, this is the thing you should be doing. It was actually somebody else that said that I should be doing that and went along with it. But it doesn't matter. I still played cleanup, and it took me 2 years. And I think that's one of the reasons why we don't listen to those discrete voices, is we're afraid of the time that's going to be robbed if it's the wrong thing to do. But yet, I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's ENTP preferences. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm intuitive lead. I have absolutely no idea. But I also believe that everybody has an inner wisdom. We have a discrete voice whispering to us. And I think it comes from whole self, the truest part of who we are, that takes everything into consideration, that says, this is the path you should be taking. This is the direction you should be going. And I'm not saying it's always going to work out. Like the path that we should be taking, maybe it will have us crossing a road at the wrong time and then we get hit by a bus. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's a guarantee. I'm just saying that when we follow our discrete inner voice, I think we play less cleanup than when we're following other people's scripts and going, oh, that person thinks I should be doing that, so that's the thing I should be doing.
Well, I would say we certainly feel more alive. I mean, feeling alive is one of the metrics that I've been following lately. What makes me feel alive and keep pursuing those things. I think for me, the podcast obviously showed me consistency, and it taught me a lot about production, taught me a lot about like feedback, like you said. I think one of the challenges we have here in personality types is that we talk about so principled because it really depends. Like, I'm an INTJ. Can you give me advice for relationships? It's like, well, how old are you? Have you ever been married before? Have you ever been in a relationship? Are you 16? Are you 66?
Right.
Like, are you straight, gay, queer? Like, what, like there's a bunch of questions here that I have. Right. Like, tell me about relationships. I'm INTJ. Like, INTJ will just tell me everything you need to hear about stuff. So I've realized just how the limitations of personality type, quite frankly, actually the limitations of type, but the expansion of personality. I'll say that.
Ooh, yeah, that's
right. The limitations of type, which we conflate the two, they're two different things. I think we recorded a podcast about this, but the expansion of personality. Personality takes more in than just type. Even Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, other typology systems. I mean, it's the essence of a person, the personhood that is you.
I think the episode is personality type is who you're not.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or type versus personality, I think, is another one we recorded. So I think that is one key thing is the contextualized nature of this. I mean, it's hard for me to say anything definitively because it really depends. In some ways, it's a limitation. I wish I didn't have the nuance thinking I have around this because then I could say it with more bombacity, more authority, and more broad brush, and maybe we'd have more success, like financial and business success.
Yeah.
Like, I think we limit ourselves by trying to be contextually appropriate for the person that we're talking with.
Yeah.
And so an individual comes into our lives and joins the Personality Life Path, for example, or listens to this show or one of our other programs, and their life has changed because we meet them where they're at on the you are here dot of their life, of the map of their life. We meet them where they're at. We don't just say, well, you're INTJ, so here's the 5 things you need to know about relationships. We first of all triangulate, where are you at as an INTJ in your life? Let's meet you there and then give you advice. Yeah. That's really hard to market and sell.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's really hard to say, hey, we'll meet you where you're at, and we can't just broad brush it. It's so much easier to say it with authority and definitive, like, this is what the 5 things INTJ should do for relationships, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, well, I recently heard something that was advice for INFJs. And I was like, yeah, that's great advice for people who are at an early part of their journey, but it is terrible advice for people at a later part of their journey.
Yeah.
And so, by the way, I'm switching to water because I'm officially slurring.
Well, I think you have to because we're out of wine.
We're out of wine, and I'm switching to water because I think it's the smart move also.
Yes.
Not just because I'm limited by the fact that we're out.
Yes.
But it was like, I'm like, that's great advice for an INFJ at a certain point, but it's terrible advice for an INFJ later. And I think that's what you're speaking to, which is this idea of like the type advice changes.
Yeah.
Even for that specific type, it changes over time. It depends upon the moment and the timeline in which they're at, the path they're walking, and their individual circumstances.
Even the person themselves and the way they're showing up as their type changes based on their level of maturity and development. We had a moment where you were on the main stage at our profiler training program. You were profiling a person, and you determined they were a certain personality type, and everybody in the audience is dissenting. And they're like, that can't be true. You're like, but look, we took a moment, we addressed this. We said, but look at the development and growth they've done. Yeah, you're seeing this function. You're seeing this part of themselves expressed, but that's because they put effort onto that. Not because it's natural to them, but because they're working on it. That's why you're seeing it. It's growth related. And everyone's like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Well, and that's the thing is that people have a tendency to type at their level of growth.
Yes.
Their level of growth or earlier.
We probably do the same thing.
I'm sure I do.
And when we profile, that's why profiling I think is so superior because you're having a dialogue.
Right.
The person can calibrate you to their level of growth.
Right.
It's not based on me observing from a distance. It's based on me having a conversation with someone.
Yeah. So I don't know what it looks like for somebody to have gone through so much growth and development that they no longer resemble their type. Because they've learned the limitations of it and they have learned to overcome those limitations, and they're still using those type preferences, but they're using them in a very different way than I understand because I've not yet got to my point of realizing that type is a problem. and then maybe I should do something about it. And maybe I should outgrow my type preferences. It's like, and I say that, of course, as representing somebody who hasn't figured that out. It's like what if the book Psychological Types, Jung's book Psychological Types, five of the chapter headings are the problem of.
Yeah.
Now, of course, he was only talking about functions in chapter 10, but he was talking about all of the other archetypes of identity and personality and psychology all the other times, and he's talking about the problems. And so our type, now he thought type was just a problem. Isabel thought it was something to be celebrated, and I think it's someplace in between. But there are things about our type preferences that we got to go, oh, maybe I shouldn't be harping on that so much. Maybe I should go to the next level of understanding of this.
Yeah.
But if we don't know there's a next level of understanding of each of these functions or type preferences, how would we possibly spot it in somebody else? Like, we can't see things we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking with Dr. John Beebe yesterday. You and I were on a call with him, and we were talking about this idea, this notion of we're so egocentric in the West.
Right.
We're so hero-centric in the West.
Mm-hmm.
It's heroic for me, for example, to be ENFP preferences. I have to develop myself, and I'm the hero of my own story, and I'm heroic. But that's not always how it is. Like, that's not even been the legacy in the past. Creating space for things to develop, not just focusing on them and trying to develop them as well. Like, there's a whole realm of that as well to talk about.
And that was such a great aha, because I'm so devoted to development.
Yeah.
That he, as an 82-year-old man, right?
Yeah.
Who has seen it all.
5 decades of Jungian analyst experience behind him.
That's right. He's like, sometimes you don't develop. Sometimes you just let it happen. And I'm like, that's really smart.
Yeah.
Like, that's my next lily pad. My next lily pad is stop trying to develop, start giving space for things to develop on their own. And yeah, and I wouldn't have known that, right? It's like there's always something next. Yeah.
So the big thing I think I've learned for all this is it's challenging because it's so, well, it's depends thinking. It's so contextual.
Yeah.
That I've said, wow, okay. And we've had people, and the reason why the Personality Life Path mentorship was started off is because somebody in Atlanta a few years ago during it was one of our bigger meetups in Atlanta, pulled us aside and was like, hey guys, you've got a group of people listening to your podcast. We're attuning to you every day. You're helping us focus in on ourselves and understand who we are. Where are you leading us? And we kind of looked at each other like, we're not trying to lead you anywhere. We're trying to lead you back to yourself because you're the leader of your own life. And that was firmly in place for me. Like, that is where I was at, is you as the listener, the person's listening right now or watching us, you are the CEO of your life. You're driving it. And yet there is, I think, space for people to get on board with something that's bigger than themselves. Mm-hmm. I think there's space for people to not be led, like tell them what to do, but to have people that are moving forward in a way that feels good, that they want to jump on the same bandwagon or train of, not in a bandwagon jumping like fad-ish way, but like, oh, those people are doing something cool. Kind of like with me going to the NLP conference with Eben, where I met you. Somebody's doing something cool, creating live events, teaching personal growth and mindset things. And I'm like, I want to learn from that person and the group of people that are doing this. I end up at that conference. There was leadership provided there for me. And I stepped into that leadership. I rested into that leadership, and I ultimately met you, and I'm doing what I'm doing now by following some of that leadership. So I think the thing I've learned is that people, yes, they want to know more about themselves. They want to know how they're wired. They want to know about the context of meeting them where they're at in their lives. But I also believe that people want to be called and challenged to something greater than themselves.
Yeah. And
they want someone to step in as a leader to say, hey, let's go do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to join it. It's cool. Like, it's not a requirement, but here's an opportunity to come follow and come do something big in the world. Mm-hmm. Let's go try it.
Yep.
I think the Personality Life Path, when we started that, was kind of a small version of this. It's like, let's go in week in and week out, and let's meet you where you're at in your life, and let's help you do a challenge each week to test these archetypical energies of these 8 functions that we talk about in your life, and then we'll culminate in a 3-day live event. We'll connect it to a systems map and a plan for your life. And it's great, but it's 8 weeks. And I'm realizing now at the pivot point here at the 500 episode, and I've been resisting this for so long, but I think we're ready to start moving into more of a weekly cadence with people, probably a membership program of some sort going forward.
Yeah.
Where people can come together once a week, maybe a couple times a week, connect to content that helps them become better versions of themselves, connect with a community of like minds, hear from people that are thinking about the cutting edge of where to go. Like we can bring people on that are guests, teachers, or people that are exploring new avenues of humanity and driving things forward that can give people a cadence of and a rhythm, a ballast, if you will, for building the life that they want to build on the long term. And I think that's really where you and I want to direct Personality Hacker at this point.
Yeah.
Something where people can be involved on a more regular basis rather than just, and not just tuning into the podcast, but coming into some framework. Maybe they listen to the podcast and then right after the podcast is like a Zoom call for members. So the podcast is still open and free for everyone because we want it to be that way. You listening or watching, maybe you've never been a customer of ours. That's cool. You can keep listening to the podcast. But then if you do want to join a membership or be part of a community of like minds that are growing and moving together, there's an opportunity for that too. And so I think I'm ready to step into that form of leadership. And I'm terrified of it because like I'm committing to leading something every week and being live and in person and all of that stuff. But I think I'm ready to make that switch because I think that's what people will resonate with it. I think we'll see a lot of people come through and really grow and develop in that framework.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens with it. And I think that's the next phase.
I think you and I have both been reluctant to do something like a membership site because we don't want to be tied down. But I think the podcast has taught us we can do something for a long time, week in and week out.
And I never wanted to be content focused like Netflix. You get a bunch of recorded stuff. I think it needs to come in more like
it needs to be person to person. It needs to be higher touch. Yeah,
something live and experiential.
Well, and I think it needs to be for people who understand that there's not just a psychological aspect to all of this. There's a spiritual aspect.
Yes.
If you go back to Jung's work, his work was not just psychological, it was spiritual. And that's why, by the way, he's got this, Jung's relationship to psychology or the psychological world is very interesting. It's like he's not fully accepted, but he's not fully demonized. He's like adjacent to modern psychology.
Yeah.
Like Freud's come in and out of fashion, right? Like it's like sometimes Freudian stuff is exactly what people are like, he was right the whole time. And other times like, no, he was wrong the whole time. But there's Jung is sort of hangs on the side. And I think the reason why the psychological world is not 100% sure what to do with him still honors and respects him because clearly he's part of the grandfathers and the lineage of psychology. There's a sense, though, that there's something about him that's like a mystic, and they're not sure what to do with that or where to place him. And it's because he's not just psychology. He's spirituality as well. He's psycho-spiritual. And our friend Arani Opaya says that spirituality without psychology is dangerous, and psychology without spirituality is incomplete. And Jung was the whole package, right? Now, he's not perfect. There was plenty of stuff that that was very embryonic. But I think we have become very tapped into this idea that psychology without spirituality is incomplete. And as people who have lost a sense of spirituality that we remember from our childhood and youth, like that was like religion was spirituality or a very set, concept of morals and values and prescriptions, that was spirituality. Spirituality has changed for us. And for me, at least, I've realized that coming to whole self, the idea of spending a lifetime figuring out how I can be the most Antonia that I can be in a single lifetime has become a version of spirituality for me. And so I think guiding other people on the same path, like you said, I mean, it's really interesting to see people's push-pull relationship with leadership, push-pull relationship with, being guided and led.
Yeah.
You can tell people are like clearly clamoring for it. They're dying for good leadership. But at the same time, this idea that anybody would want to be a leader is like super suspicious. Like, why do you want to be a leader? It must just be power. You must just want power. And then at the same time, there's this idea of, there's this desire for leadership, like good, honest leadership. So how does a person become a good, honest leader without communicating that they're just this power-hungry mongrel that's trying to exploit everybody around them? And I don't know if this is the perfect answer, but for me, it's like, well, you just model it. You just do it. You just go do the thing. And as you're doing the thing, you go, so I'm doing this thing. And it's really actually kind of cool. Do other people want to go do this thing with me? And that's the leadership that people will accept because they're suspicious of all other kinds of leadership. And I think when it comes to finding whole self and the psycho-spiritual realm of the leadership you're talking about, I think it's like, well, that means, and I think the podcast, again, has taught me this. It's taught me that I have to be doing the work. I have to be walking the walk, not just talking the talk. The challenge is that when you walk the walk, like you said, everything becomes really context dependent.
Yeah.
There's no easy answers when you're walking the walk. The easier the answer, the less the person's actually walking it, right?
Yeah.
The more like, well, you just do this and it works. Sometimes you can pare it down. I'm not saying that you can't. Like sometimes you can pare it down, go, if you do this thing, like 100% of people that do this thing are probably going to have positive results. All right. There's some things like that. But most things when it comes to the individual, it's very contextual. And that's the challenge. The challenge is like, I want a pill. Well, it's a pill, but it's made especially for you. I need to know a whole bunch of things about you in order to create this pill. And if you take the pill, it'll work. But you're going to have to do a lot of work to figure out which pill it is you need to take.
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't just get the magic pill. So I think this idea of leading people to whole self, leading people to become the most them, not the best version of them, the most them, right? Because I think the best version creates this sense of almost purification, self-purification. I need to be pure. I need to be the best version. I need to do my shadow work in my 30s or 20s because I need to be pure. And it's like, no. It's not about purity. It's about it's about opportunity. It's about becoming the most version of yourself in a single lifetime. So how do you do that? Well, you do that through self-knowledge, through self-acceptance, through permission to be self, to listening to the discrete voices inside of you, taking a risk, taking a chance on those voices. It means a bunch of stuff that's like really super scary and uncertain. And it means making peace with the parts of yourself that feel demonic. It means taking in the whole thing. And I don't think we would have gotten to this point. I don't think we would have gotten to the point where we're like, yeah, let's maybe start sort of modeling this and into the future and going a psycho-spiritual direction. I don't think any of this would have happened had we not just done this stupid freaking podcast every freaking week. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing. This is the platform underneath all of it. I think this is like, but these are the pylons upon which everything sits.
Yeah.
So, and it could have been anything. It could have been a podcast. It could have been something else. It would have been smart if it had been YouTube.
Well, we could have done, and that's the other thing too I learned about this is there are waves of opportunity that come that sometimes you get really lucky. I mean, I think the time we started this in 2014 was a time when audio podcast was ripe for taking off.
Mm-hmm.
And had we done it 3 years later or 3 years before, it might not have had the same effect.
Yeah, luck is a major node in the system of our success.
Timing and luck. Now, YouTube, we weren't as on the stick about it. I'm like, YouTube will always be there. Why work on it right now? Let's keep focusing on the audio podcast.
Well, YouTube, when we really should have gotten in the game of YouTube, like really hardcore, because we had a YouTube presence, but I think we should have buckled down on YouTube minimum by 2019. 2020 would have been a perfect time. We just had too much personal stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think, video is way harder than audio.
Yeah, you have to like do your hair.
Take a shower.
You have to take a shower. You have to wear pants. You have to do all sorts of things. You have to be not an old fucker like us.
I got to put an explicit tag on this now. It's so great.
Explicit tag. By the way, should we do a 500 podcast, 500A, 500B, or should we just assume that Christian's going to like take care of this for
I'm
us?
going to do the entire thing on this one.
What?
I mean, I think it's like, so if you look back at the 100 episode, the 200 episode, the 300 episode, 400 episode, each one we kind of talk about the place we're at. I think this is we're in kind of this, we're in the place we're at. So this is where we're at.
I keep worrying that I'm still in the frame of the camera too.
No, I'm sure you're fine. If you're not, I'm sure
That's
somebody
fine.
can watch it
This
anyway.
is our podcast for us. And by the way, I only promised you, here's the other thing. We have not revealed.
Oh, yeah.
What did I promise you?
10 years or 500 episodes.
You got it. So I am fulfilling my obligation to you as a partner that this is the 500th episode is what I promised you.
Now we can see how many people watch to the end. If you want this to keep going, you also want Antonia to promise you to go to 501 and beyond. You need to come over and make a comment or leave a review on iTunes as soon as you can so Antonia can read them and get inspired. This has been tough for you to do this many.
This has not been easy.
There's been times you didn't want to do it, and there's been times I didn't want to do it either.
Yeah.
And once we record it and get it done, we're like, thank goodness we did that. I'm glad I have done. It's like I don't like to write, but I like having
written.
Same type of thing here.
There are podcasts I've recorded with a quivering voice because I'm in such a low place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the definition of a true professional.
Is it?
You do it. You do it even when you don't feel like it, right?
You do it even when you suck.
You just keep doing it, and I feel like a lot of the episodes have been great. I mean, we've put the work in, and that's why I'm okay with indulging this episode, drinking some wine, letting it ramble on, talking about whatever we want. It's like, man, we've paid it forward. Anytime I get a comment under like our YouTube videos or anything, it's like the free podcast, like this didn't blah, blah, blah. Can you timestamp it? Because I can't find the information. I'm like, your refund check is in the mail.
Yeah, that's right.
For 500 episodes, I believe that we've sat down with a microphone and delivered great content. We've sat here and we've tried to help you as the person listening or watching with your life. We've helped try to contextualize personality types and other systems and models, and we've tried to like be vulnerable with ourselves.
That's right.
And so I think that after 499 episodes, on episode 500, I think I can make this about myself and you and still have you be part of this, listening or watching.
Or not, whatever. We don't care.
Or if you didn't make it, that's okay too.
It's just about us.
Time capsule. I never did get to my list of top podcasts, though. I would like to just anchor to record this for myself, to have this in the
posterity.
episode.
We gotta wrap up, and I also want to know, what is your favorite, just for me, I'm just curious, what's your favorite episode of the last 10 years?
My favorite episode?
Mm-hmm. Do the top 10, top 20 or whatever you're going to do, and then be thinking about that.
I will think about that. It's hard to know what my favorite is because
I know. I always know what my favorite podcast episode is. Yeah.
I think I know there are moments when after I recorded one, I'm like, wow, I feel really good about that one.
Yeah.
And those always feel good and they feel like going to be my favorite, but I don't know what my favorite would be.
You know what's weird is that every time I record a podcast and I feel terrible about it, it always does really well. And every time I record a podcast and I feel amazing about it, nobody ever says anything about them.
I will say that so far my favorites of any time we have a live studio audience and we're engaging with real people, and which is something we want to do in the future as well as a membership program. And maybe they'll be tied together actually. That is Stop yawning. You can't yawn, Antonia. This is exciting to record the 500th episode. You can't yawn.
Now Christian has to edit it me yawning.
He's not yet editing that out. We're leaving it in. It's
no,
fine.
I mean, he's going to edit me yawning so that...
Oh, so you can see it?
Yeah. Keep it on the DL.
Live podcasts. Mm-hmm. Live podcasts are the thing. I think anytime we're in a group environment with real people engaged in high energy, and I just want to do more and more of them.
Yeah. We will, hopefully.
So let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can read these really quick.
Okay.
I'll get to 10 in a second. But way down, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. So 25, the top 25 episodes.
Okay. 25
is introverted thinking versus extroverted thinking. 24 is personality types and insecurity. Some of these, the thing is off the side, so I can't see what episode number they are, but I can call out the episode number if I do see it. That's 274. Romantic personality type pairings is number 23.
What year is that from?
2018.
Okay, it's probably okay then.
And
if we did it in 2014, it probably sucked. But
the introverted thinking versus extroverted thinking was 2017. Romantic types insecurity from 2019. Romantic personality type pairings is 2018. The top 22nd podcast, number 22.
Number 22
on the top 25 list is how perceiving polarities influence your personality type. It's from 2018.
Wow, that's a mouthful of a subject.
I would say most of these are from 2018, 2019. Most of the successful ones.
We were on a roll.
And I think the other reason too is they've had time to build up. Like the one we released last week isn't going to be in the top 25 because it has enough time to get in the top 25. Time actually comes into this too.
Time does. I think another thing is that was probably at the height of my type understanding too, and your type understanding before we got really young in.
Before we got woo-woo and...
Before we were like shadow functions and whole self. And I know we're type enthusiasts. We want to hear all that, but it's like, do ya? Not really, because at the end we were always like, and you need to do a bunch of stuff you don't want to do. Yeah. But that was, I think that was a height for us. Yeah. Anyway.
Number 21 is self-discipline and self-boundaries. Number 20 is extroverted feeling versus introverted feeling. So people
Yeah.
care more about the feeling functions than the thinking functions, just so you know.
That's because more NFs are into type than NTs.
That's right, because we're cooler people. I don't know. Number 19 is developing thinking as a co-pilot. This is for INTJs or IXTJs. Well, not just IXTJs.
Yeah, ETJs and ITPs.
Developing thinking as a co-pilot?
Oh, no, sorry.
That'd be
Sorry, ITJs and ETPs.
Yes. Yeah.
But my guess is that the ITJs are the ones that really kick that one to the top.
Possibly. Way back at 2015, I think there's a few on here from 2015. There's one from 2014 when we started. It's actually number 1, and I'll get to that in a moment. But from 2015, ENFJ personality type advice, episode 90.
Oh, the personality type advice ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was from 2015. Developing feeling as a co-pilot. So this is similar to the other one, developing thinking as a co-pilot.
That's right. Feelers. I think more feelers are into type than thinkers. I said NTs or NFs than NTs, but I think that counts for the sensors too.
Attachment theory in relationships. This is way back in 2016.
Attachment theory has gotten really big lately too. The last couple of years, attachment theories like become the new typology.
Yes.
And so
Heidi Priebe talks about this a lot.
She does. She's got really good content around it too.
Next is practical steps to getting unstuck in life. That was up there. That's 2019.
Okay.
From 2016, how personality types say I love you.
That's always been a fan favorite.
It's also been really high up on YouTube as well because we cross-published the audio versions on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Then personal lessons from INFP and INFJ. I can't read the rest of the things. It's off the side, but
I think that was when we made our INFX Empowered program.
Yes, that's 2019.
And that was what we learned from creating that program.
Yes. Why the world needs introverted intuition. So NI, or perspectives, as we call it here at Personality Hacker. That's from 2019. Number 11, top episode of all time, is INTP Personality Type Advice, episode number 85, all the way back to 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So the second year we're recording, that came out. Okay, number 10. We're to the top 10 list. Here we go. Number 10, why the world needs introverted sensing. So introverted sensing, SI, or what we've called memory.
Wow, that one outranks introverted intuition. That's surprising and good.
And that's from 2019.
Because introverted sensing is the bomb, by the way. I wish I could go back and re-record that one and give it even more love. Because at this point, introverted sensing might be one of my favorite functions.
Really?
Maybe that's just because I'm a 45-year-old that's like really integrating it right now. But I'm like, introverted sensing is the best. Why isn't everybody doing this all the time? And it's like, everybody is doing it all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but we could be all doing it more and better. Love this function.
The number 9 most popular episode is from 2018, Developing Intuition as a Co-Pilot.
Okay.
Or auxiliary.
Yeah.
The number 8 podcast is Personal Experience with Energy Awareness from 2019. That's the number 8. That's me talking about. I remember on that episode being a little insecure because I was working with Glenn, my energy coach, and you were like, let's talk about this. And I'm like, but I don't know enough to talk about this. And I was like hemming and hawing.
This is in our top 10 too.
I know.
I told you, whenever we feel weird about something afterwards, it always that's a good one.
But I listen back and I'm like, oh, I feel so insecure in that one. It's like hard to listen to for me.
All right.
Number 7 is using the Enneagram for personal growth. So the Enneagram is number 7 in 2019. And then number 6 is also the Enneagram. Enneagram Instincts and Passions with Dr. Beatrice Chestnut in 2020.
It's a good one.
It's number 6. You want to hear 5, 4, 3, and 2, 1?
Let me guess. They're all NFJ stuff.
No.
Okay.
So close. From 2015, episode 86 is ENFP Personality Type Advice.
Are they all personality type advice ones?
No.
Okay.
Is number
ENFP.
5.
Okay.
Yeah, close though. Number 4 episode of all time is also from 2015. INTJ Personality Type Advice, episode number 88.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it breaks the pattern. Number 3 from 2016, episode 152 is Emotional Scripts We Run in Life. Is number 3 of all time.
Really?
Emotional Scripts We Run in Life. It's probably a good one. I think one of those kinds are probably one of my favorites. I can't remember which one, but those were good back then. Mm-hmm. And the top 2, And here we go. This is going to be no surprise to people. Episode 55 from 2015. Number 2 is INFP, personality type advice. And then if we go to the number 1 spot, drum roll, episode number 34 from 2014. So the 34th episode we ever recorded. Now, it's had a lot of time to build traction.
Yeah.
Can you guess which one it is? I think you're
Let me
not
guess.
going to be surprised when I say it.
Let me guess. INFJ, personality type advice.
You got it.
I got it.
You got the bingo
Ding, ding, ding.
scorecard.
Yes.
Because INFJs, if nothing else, can be relied upon to listen to personality type content.
You got it. And all the people who think they're INFJs that aren't.
Which is a surprising amount of people that we found.
Yes. I think I figured something out. What's natural to an INFJ becomes coping mechanisms for anybody in a terribly traumatic experience, like growing up, particularly PTSD.
Yes.
Higher attunement to people's emotional reactions, having a higher sense of empathy in order to deal with angry caretakers.
So in a world filled with people loaded with trauma, they read an INFJ description and they go, this must be me. Because it describes all the picking up people's psychic energy and tuning to their emotions and watching for things that are going to go wrong, etc.
You got it. And, there's a siren, a police siren. That's fortuitous or the serendipitous at this time period that we're talking about trauma.
They're not coming for us.
Well, fingers crossed.
I hope not.
But here's the thing, an INFJ is going to have all of that even if they haven't experienced one drop of trauma.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. The difference is INFJs are just kind of like that. They just are sensitive in that way.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of people who have gone through really traumatic experiences that have had to develop some of these empathic tendencies in order to like navigate their lives. So a big one is which is which. And it's like if you've had a ton of trauma, then maybe reevaluate your type preferences. If you haven't had any trauma and you still feel like you have INFJ preferences, you're probably good. So that's the pattern I picked up. Okay, are we good? No.
Can we wrap up? Go ahead.
Let's wrap up, but I want to hear what your favorite podcast episode is.
Well, I just want to say my disappointment. Can I?
It's really with you, Antonia. I just want to wrap this up by talking about how disappointed I am with you.
Not with you, with myself. I had this idealism of like the 500th podcast. I've been thinking about this for months, but we've been in such chaos moving and stuff. I'm like, I want this big event. I want like, because I'm a social subtype in the Enneagram, right? I want like people around. I want to be celebratory. I want to like make a big deal, like an anniversary kind of thing around it. I want people to like send in like little 30-second clips of what the podcast meant to them, and we're going to put it in the episode. I had like all these big plans. And that's another thing I've learned in this podcast is I personally tend to build things into these idealisms, these big projects, these big things. And I've noticed that direct action trumps all of that. Like direct action cuts through all the noise and the clutter.
Yep.
And I can say that if the podcast has spoken to you or impacted your life, I would still love for you to send in either an audio or video, 20 seconds or less, maybe 30 seconds at the most. 30 seconds or less, I'll say that. Come again. 30 seconds or less, some kind of recording to talk about how the podcast impacted you. If it's useful, I'd like to post these on the social channels.
Yeah.
Like if you send something in, video or audio, saying, hey, Joel, Antonia, just want to let you know, I've been listening since blah, blah, blah. I'm this personality type. Here's how the podcast has impacted my life. Just wanted to let you know. That would do me a personal favor just because I would get to hear from you. You know me at the end of podcasts. If you listen for any amount of time, I'm always like, we want to hear from you. Come over. In fact, I'll say it right now. Come over to personalityhacker.com directly below this episode. Leave a comment, ask a question, or more importantly, share your story about which podcast or how this podcast has impacted your life, helped you reframe something or think about something or learn something. I'd love for you to do that in audio or video version and send it in to us. Link to it so we can download it and then hopefully weave it into some kind of piece of content in the future. It would speak to us, I think, a lot if you'd be willing to do that. 2
things, Joel.
Yes.
The first one is I'm not ready to end because I want to hear what your favorite episode is. I have one.
I honestly don't. I want to hear yours. You're teeing yourself up here because
No, I honestly want to know what yours is. Okay, just think about it for a second. And the second thing is
favorite episode.
Nobody's listening right now, so we'll have to send that an email or something because I think we've lost everybody. Because this is the Joel and Antonia.
This is the true fan that's going to actually record something for me.
The true fan that's like
the one person that's the true. I stuck there for 2 hours till the bitter end. I'll tell you guys what it did for me.
It might not be 2 hours though. Christian might like mercifully cut out the parts that are like grueling.
It's fine.
Or not. Who knows? We're just doing our thing. Cognitive functions in time.
Cognitive Functions in Time was your favorite?
Is my favorite episode. I love that episode. Nobody ever listens to it.
Yeah.
I always go, you should go listen to the one on cognitive functions in time. Nobody ever listens to it. It's like, it's probably like episode 498 in the list of episode popularity. I'm like, it's a good one. Go listen to it.
There's been a couple that we did that I've liked a lot that haven't got a lot of traction.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I'm surprised. Like, we never date things or make them content dependent. But remember back in 2015 during the Baltimore City riots.
Oh, yeah.
We took the Graves model, spiral dynamics. We applied it toward the city of Baltimore and talked a little about some of the aspects of that. Now, I was much more, like, I didn't have as much information about I don't know if I stand behind it anymore, but I know it was way down there. I'm always surprised. It was like an application of the Graves model into a real world situation that was happening on the ground in Baltimore City. And I'd lived there and I thought it was a great, and it's like it's like episode 498 or 499. I mean, it's like way down the list of like popularity.
It's a good one.
I thought it was a good one though at the time. And we talk about some of the issues there.
Speaking of which, I'm going to give a plug right now, even though we're not talking about generational theory. The book by Neil Howe, The Fourth Turning is Here.
Yeah.
I mean, the one person who's watching this that's like, I'll send in my 30-second reel to Joel. The one person also simultaneously go out and buy that book. It is the most important book of the next decade. It is hands down the best book I've read in memory.
By the way, that's how we met Christian Rivera.
You're right.
You asked people in our audience to send a birthday greeting to me for my 40th birthday.
Yeah.
And Christian sent one in, and we're like, this guy does video production. And I reached out to him and thanked him for the video, and that's how I got to know Christian.
You're right.
Who's editing this right now, watching it.
Love.
That's how I met him, by sending a video recording in. So maybe I get to meet you in person if you send one in. So there's a benefit. I'm weaving benefit.
To the one person who's still here.
Benefit-driven headlines. Benefit-driven call to actions, right?
You one person. You send that in, and maybe Joel will meet you.
Well, we'll get to meet each other. And
right.
Also, if you come out to one of our live podcasts, at the time of this recording, we've got a few scheduled for this season coming up. There's like just multiple sirens in the background now.
What is going on? We're like in the suburbs of Gettysburg.
The type police are coming for us.
The type
Oh
police.
God, we've gone over 2 hours or how many hours. The type police are on their way.
I'm really an ESTJ.
Oh God.
I didn't know.
It's all
the
going
type police
down.
are coming for me.
It's all going down. I just hear sirens flying off everywhere. Okay, we got to wrap this blessing up here. So my favorite podcast, man, I honestly don't know. First of all, I'm having a hard time remembering all of them.
Yeah, there's been a lot.
I mean, 500 episodes to go through.
Yeah.
Which I think at the 100 episode mark, TV shows go into like syndication. We've done 5 over that. I wish I had a phone to do calculation. What is a season, a television show, 22 episodes?
Mm-hmm.
What is 500 divided by 22?
Well, so 20 goes into 100 is 5 times.
Yeah.
And 5 times 5 is 25.
So it'd be like the Simpsons, right? Well, not that far, or the South Park, but we're approaching Simpsons levels of consistency of that many seasons.
All right, one more cheers and then we end it.
All right.
To my love, 500 episodes.
By the way, thank you for recording this with me.
I promise
I know sometimes.
I have delivered.
I think that just effed up the audio. Am I still on?
Yeah.
You kicked something that made it go out. Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, cheers. So
cheers.
Thank you again for recording these with me. Thank you for recording these with me. I appreciate the fact that you've done this with me for 500 episodes. We have empty wine glasses, but cheers to
like a little
500 more. Let's hope.
Thank you for pushing me this last 9.5 years. I love you.
I love you too. Let's keep going. Let's see what's next. All right. If you've been listening along, now's your chance to come over, like we've said. Personalityhacker.com. Directly below this episode, leave a comment, ask a question. More importantly, share your story. Where are you at in your personal growth life, your personality type, understanding life? Let us know what you've learned. If you've listened to us for any length of time, I'd love to know what you took away from this episode. And even better, send a video or audio in. I think it's really cool.
That's right. And because this is the Joel and Antonia podcast episode where we've been completely self-indulgent, I'll just say, go buy our stuff. Like, go get the book. Go get an owner's manual. Let's
just liquor you up and see what happens every episode. From now on, I'm just going to get a bottle of wine. We'll see what happens.
Go support us because we've been doing this for a long time, and sometimes we say some cool stuff. So go, I don't know, take an action or not. I don't know, send Joel the little reel that goes, I love you, Joel. Your luscious locks and your forehead and the whole thing. I love it. So go do that. And There's some other things I say about iTunes and YouTube and books and all that stuff. So yeah, make it all happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is that a good one?
Yeah. Thanks so much to our team who's been so supportive of us.
Oh my gosh.
I think back all the way to, back people that have worked with us in the past, Ryan and Nee and Chelsea and Kimberly and Cheris. Way back in the early days. None of those people are still working with us now, but they originally were on the team.
They were so important to us for so long. And
Addison, and there are other people. I'm probably forgetting somebody that I should be remembering. Now we have people on the team of Ines and Laura. Christian obviously edits things. Karina, Anne, Jess. Thanks so much for other partners like Dario. Who am I forgetting? I'm sure I'm going to forget somebody that's on the team. People. Chris. A bunch of people that make all of this happen behind the scenes, on the team. Just thank you guys too. Thank you so much. You may never hear this, but I'm just recording it now to anchor it in as a totem to thank you. Who am I forgetting? I want to make sure I don't forget anybody that's working with us or has worked with us recently.
When you get to do this at the end of the book, you get to think about it for a while.
Exactly.
I didn't even know we were going to do this.
Thanks to my kids. Piper right now is sitting in there chilling by herself at 11 years old, patiently waiting for us to record this.
Which she's done her entire life.
Yeah.
Since she was like 2.
And she came out here and brought us food and our waters, and she helped us with stuff. And so thanks to my children and my family supportive, a bunch of people to get to this place.
Yep.
Now the music, the Oscar music should go. But just wanted to thank our team and how much, I'm sure I forgot somebody on that, but if I forgot you, I didn't mean to. Thank you so much for being invested in helping what we're doing here. And I'm excited for the next phases. I'm excited for what's coming next and keep moving. So if you've been a listener for a long time, we welcome you to come over to personalityhacker.com again, like I said, or iTunes. Like Antonia said, go get some stuff. Go get one of our programs. Join one of our programs. It's going to be life-changing for you.
Join Personality Life Path when it comes out. It will change the game. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. My name is Joe Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Reporting from you from episode number 500. And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast. Hey, it's Joel from Personality Hacker. So a big reason people get into personality types is usually to improve their relationships with other people. And you can understand key differences between you and someone else when you understand how type works. So clearly, personality type is applied to relationships. But what about the relationship with yourself? Well, personality type can also help you navigate your career, or maybe an educational path that you need to follow, or other opportunities that present themselves, and it helps you know which are the right choice for you. And ultimately, personality is the key to unlocking identity-level worldview and life purpose. It all starts with getting the owner's manual for your personality type. In this owner's manual, we cover the basics of your personality. And then we dive a layer deeper to connect your personality to your relationships, your career, your worldview, and identity. Because we believe it's your life, and it should be designed for your personality. So start your owner's manual journey at personalityhacker.com. When you access your owner's manual, I recommend focusing on the ideal day exercise first. Because when you start crafting your ideal day, you're being mindful about the type of lifestyle that you want. So designing a life around how you're naturally wired makes sense, and you can finally stop fighting yourself. So come discover and develop your unique personality at personalityhacker.com.